Chapter 1596. These weren't ordinary bullets. As a member of the Black Religious Order's operation team, it was no different from a fool's dream to rely on ordinary bullets to traverse the inhuman world. The bullets were specially made, and they were extremely effective against magicians and other inhumans. They were also a threat to inhumans with the physics attribute. There were inhumans who could dodge the bullets, but not many of them could catch the bullets with their fingers. The woman felt that she was lucky to meet one in this manner. She took a deep breath and slowly stood up. She was still using the blanket to cover her body, but she had already lowered her pistol. She understood that she might have fallen into the house of an inhuman. Now that she thought about it, the black-haired young man she threatened was too calm. The bullets were confiscated by Eve. "Miss, I'm glad you didn't continue to attack. Otherwise, according to the agreement, I would consider you as an intruder and eliminate you." The woman didn't know what agreement the maid was talking about, but she guessed that it was the rules of the manor. She frowned but didn't say anything. She fainted due to her injuries. Although she had undergone surgery, her body couldn't support strenuous exercise. As for the armor, it wasn't the time to use it. Besides, the pendant was lost, so it might have fallen into the hands of the intruder. If her body wasn't in such a bad condition, she wouldn't be afraid of the mysterious inhuman in this manor. But which side does this manor belong to? How should I start to contact the intruder? The woman was in a dilemma. "Miss, since you've woken up," Eve suddenly said, "my master said to invite you to see him after you wake up." Master? The woman who caught the anti-magic bullets with her bare hands had a master. She looked at the maid's uniform in a daze. Indeed, she should have a master. Master? The black-haired young man in front of the manor? Okay, I'll go see him. The woman thought for a moment and nodded. Then, in front of Eve, the woman lifted the blanket on her body and put on her clothes without any hesitation. Only then did she realize that her clothes had been washed clean and looked brand new. She was silent for a few seconds before she said indifferently, "Thanks for helping me clean my clothes." Lin Sangio had performed a surgery on her and saved her life. Instead of thanking her, Lin Sangio became polite over such a trivial matter. Her eyes flickered as if she was thinking about something. "So," Eve said expressionlessly, "other than the dirt and dust on your clothes, there are also some bloodstains. Dirty level 4. Yuye's master said not to let dirty things near him, especially dirty women." The woman opened her mouth. Dirty. Ever since she joined the cultivation, she was called dirty. This was the first time. Level 4. What's the next level? The woman asked while suppressing her anger. Eve said indifferently, "Flirtatious women, indecent women, adulterous women, and dragons." The woman could roughly figure out what the so-called Master Yuye's master was thinking based on this information. But what the hell was the dragon? Shaking her head, the woman sighed and said seriously, "I'm done. Take me to your master." "This way, please." Eve made an impeccable gesture of invitation. She didn't seem like a human. The woman suddenly had such a feeling. She was like one of those emotionless men of sacrifice trained by the cultivation. "What's your name?" the woman asked immediately. "Eve." "Eve, the first woman created by God?" The woman couldn't help but fall into deep thought. She didn't think for a long time. It only took her a few minutes to arrive at her destination, the kitchen. It was a semi-open kitchen. It was a large kitchen with a rectangular stone table in the middle. Boss Luo was standing in front of the stove. Wearing an apron, he looked like a housekeeper. Before the woman came in, she had already smelled a very fragrant smell. Her body reacted instinctively and saliva was secreted at a slightly faster rate than usual. She told herself that it was probably because her body was injured and needed a large amount of nutrition quickly. That was why she sent out such a signal. "Master, I've brought her." Eve didn't care about this. She just carried out every order meticulously. "She's recovering well." Based on the physiological structure of a normal human, she can be classified as excellent. So, she has the initial ability to move. But she's not a threat, Eva continued to report in great detail. As she listened, the woman's face, which was originally pale because of the wound on her hand, became even more unsightly. In fact, her face even darkened. "Thank you for your hard work, Eve." Boss Luo turned off the stove and said with a smile, "Leave this to me. You go upstairs and continue your work." "Okay." Eva nodded and turned to leave. She was really obedient. The woman had personally experienced being tamed by Eve. So, this young man in front of her. "I made some soup." Boss Luo carried a plate to the table and started to set the cutlery. He was quite familiar with it. "I've been eating alone for the past few days. So, it's a little simpler. But your injury hasn't healed yet. You shouldn't eat too greasy food. Eat it while it's hot. Don't eat food from strangers." Probably people with a little bit of training would follow this rule seriously, let alone a mysterious organization like Black Cultivation. "You are a magician?" the woman suddenly asked. Boss Luo blinked his eyes, as if he was asking why she said that. The woman frowned and said, "Along the way there are many magic props. I also smelled a few special herbs. Those are herbs that only secret pharmacists use. And the stove you use to cook is also one of them." She then pointed at the crystal lamp on the kitchen roof and said calmly, "This lamp is also one of them. Miss Lamia's, right?" Boss Luo smiled. "You're quite observant and have a keen sense of smell. Well, you can treat me as a magician." Anyway, it wasn't the first time he was treated as a magician. Boss Luo didn't intend to explain anything. Magic was very simple to use. "You know me?" The woman, Lamia's, suddenly became vigilant. Boss Luo said casually, "When you were unconscious, you dropped a teacher's certificate. Your name is written on it." Lamia's suddenly said, "I'm afraid that I lost more than just a certificate. There's also a necklace." Boss Luo knew what she was talking about. Lamia's necklace was taken off by Eve during the operation. It was indeed in his hands now. "Sit down first." Boss Luo pointed at the chair next to Lamia's. The chair automatically pulled out. Lamia's didn't say anything and sat down slowly. She felt like she was sitting on a carpet of needles. She felt more and more strange in this manner. After that, Boss Luo walked to the cupboard and seemed to take something out. Lamia's eyes twitched. She clearly saw her necklace, pendant. The thing was just casually placed next to the stove. She didn't even notice it. No one would casually touch such an important thing like a small object. This was a cognitive blind spot. "I thought it was interesting, so I studied it a little." Boss Luo put the pendant in front of Lamia's and said calmly, "Don't worry. You brought it here, so I'll naturally return it to you." When Lamia's held the pendant in her hand again, and confirmed that it wasn't a fake, she had a more unreal feeling. Didn't this person notice this pendant? "You know what this is?" "A holy relic." Boss Luo sat down and drank a mouthful of water. Then, he slowly drank the soup. "A contaminated holy relic. Well, if I'm not wrong, it was probably contaminated with the blood of the Impaler Duke. It wasn't as simple as sitting on a carpet of needles." A chill ran down her spine. If she wasn't an important person in cultivation, and if she didn't know every high-ranking person in cultivation, she might have thought that he was a member of cultivation. Otherwise, how did he know about the holy relic of reversal? Of course, just the blood of the Impaler Duke isn't enough. Boss Luo said, "It also needs to be soaked in the blood of a devout believer in despair for a period of time. There are quite a lot of steps." "Who are you?" Lamia's took a deep breath. She didn't even feel the heavy pressure when she was facing Father Stella. Now, she felt like she was suffocating. He was just sitting in front of the dining table in an environment that seemed like a casual conversation, but he was talking about such a dangerous topic. "That's not important," Boss Luo said casually. "At least that's what it looks like now. Miss Lamias, I don't mean you any harm. I don't plan to get anything from you by saving you now. As for the future, who can say for sure what will happen in the future? But you still chose to save me, didn't you? There was no free lunch in this world. Just take it as. Boss Luo smiled faintly and said, just take it as ending the fate between us. At that time, Boss Luo had just taken office not long ago, and he was still in the stage of ignorance about everything. Ramalia and the others were all guided by Miss Maid. At that time, he met Miss Nun and took her weapon out of curiosity. Now, he let Eve perform the operation and save Lamias's life using normal means. It could be considered as ending the connection between them, but Lamias obviously didn't know about it. Boss Luo didn't intend to explain. Fate. Lamias suddenly felt that she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That's really an ill-fated fate. I actually came to this place by accident. After escaping from Father Stella's church, she almost didn't think carefully about the way to go. She couldn't go in the town, so she could only go in the direction of the suburbs. Although she didn't come here in a panic, it was indeed unintentional. I think you should be able to move now, Boss Luo suddenly said. After dinner, you can choose to stay here and rest for the night. Maybe you can leave overnight. You're letting me go? Lamias looked at him in disbelief. Boss Luo said, shouldn't I let you go, Miss Lamias? Lamias opened her mouth. The young master of this manor probably knew about her origin and knew about the holy relic of reversal. But he just returned such an important holy relic of reversal to her and let her leave at any time. Something's not right. Something's not right. There must be something wrong. Is this guy a good person? Lamias's mind raced, but she still couldn't figure out the motive for his actions. Or rather, he let her go like this. Actually, he had some other purpose, such as fishing with a long line? Perhaps she would be ambushed by that maid the moment she stepped out of the door after leaving the manor. This kind of thing had happened many times throughout history. I'll stay for the night. Lamias stared at his expression. I'll leave early tomorrow morning. Indeed. Boss Luo nodded. Rest for one more night and your strength will recover better. Then, Miss Lamias, your range of activity is your room, the first floor of the manor, and the courtyard outside. I hope you can abide by this. Is the area above the second floor not open to me? Lamias nodded. Yes. Then, please do as you please, Miss Lamias. Boss Luo stood up. It turned out that he had unknowingly finished eating. Just leave the cutlery here. Eve will wash it. Also, if you need anything, you can look for Eve. She will arrange it for you. Just like that, he left. After Boss Luo left, the whole kitchen was extremely quiet. Lamias's body was a little stiff. This kind of silence was even a little strange. Along the way, besides Eve, she had only seen this young manor owner. Could it be that only the two of them lived in this big manor? After a simple meal, Lamias slowly walked alone in the hall on the first floor. There was nothing blocking the stairs leading to the upper floor. She didn't feel any eyes on her, nor was there any surveillance equipment around. Lamias was startled. That guy was so confident that she would keep her promise? Shaking her head, Lamias thought for a while. In the end, she didn't walk up the stairs, because she found something else that was more important to her at this moment. An antique phone. Wait, did I bring my teacher's certificate out? The moment Lamias picked up the antique phone, she suddenly remembered something. She was going to attack Father Stella. How could she bring something that could expose her identity? Was it a joke? Chapter 1597. Before the battle, Lamias did not have a landline phone with her. In such a high-intensity battle, any electronic gadgets she had would probably be destroyed. Therefore, it was good enough that she was able to find a landline phone. Even if the landline phone in front of her was an antique rotary dial, Lamias did not say anything. She lifted the cylinder and pressed it against her neck. Then, she poked her finger into the rotary dial. A few seconds later, a dozen seconds later, a minute later, Lamias suddenly put the cylinder back and left with a cold face. The phone was still working. There was signal. Obviously, she could call the outside world. However, Lamias discovered a shocking fact. After getting used to using a modern cell phone, she did not have the habit of remembering phone numbers, except for her own phone number. This place is not far from the school. It's at most half an hour's drive away. That woman named Eve. I didn't expect her surgical skills to be so superb. But now, the pain is more intense. I'm afraid it's because the anesthesia has worn off. The armor will automatically repair itself in 5 hours. After 5 hours, I can use the armor's built-in healing technique to recover. This manor has been hiding a secret since the beginning. Should I investigate it carefully? Countless thoughts appeared in Lamias's mind. Finally, she decided to walk around the manor in the courtyard. This was within the range of activities allowed by the owner of the manor. After 5 hours, the armor will be activated. When I face Eve, I won't be as passive as I am now. I can also investigate the strength of Eve and the owner of the manor. What is this? When night fell, Lamias, who had walked out of the manor and came to the courtyard, heard some singing. It was the voice of a woman singing. But obviously, it was not Eve's voice. This instantly overturned Lamias's inference that only the owner of the manor and Eve lived in the manor. The voice came from the attic on the east side of the manor. Lamias walked out a few steps and looked up. Under the dim light, she saw something sitting in front of the window sill of the attic. A shadow, a square shadow. A bolster. One of them could sing and was currently singing. She had big eyes and looked like she had walked out of a cartoon. A bolster! Lamias's eyes widened. Even though she was in the inhuman world and was used to seeing all kinds of strange things, she still couldn't help but be surprised when she saw a pillow with hands, feet, eyes, a mouth, and even a singing voice. Magical creatures, she could only deduce in this direction. Magicians were a group of eccentric people. They would use magic to create many magic puppets to serve them. Lamias had seen a lot of magic puppets in the past, commonly known as gargoyles. They were the servants that most magicians liked to create. But a bolster that could sing, this was the first time she had seen one. Lamias felt that this pillow was fundamentally different from the gargoyle golems that moved sluggishly. Just as she was about to get closer to the pillow to study it, the pillow on the attic window sill seemed to have noticed something. It looked down and blinked. The bolster jumped into the window and pulled the curtains close. Then, the lights in the attic were turned off. Lamias opened her mouth in surprise and then shook her head. But she was even more afraid of the owner of the manor who could create such a sentient bolster. Although the owner of the manor looked like he was in his early 20s, it was very likely that he was hundreds of years old. Magicians were a group of people who could maintain their youth with secret potions. He said that he only moved here a few weeks ago. What is his purpose? Is he someone from the Magician Association? Lamias had more and more doubts in her mind. After thinking about it, she felt that if she didn't know the origin of the owner of the manor, it would bring a lot of uncertainty to what she was going to do in the town. Boss Luo, who was reading in the study, suddenly heard a sound. It was the sound of someone knocking on the window with a stone. Boss Luo walked to the balcony and opened the window. He saw Lamias in the courtyard looking up at him. The way she threw a stone to call someone was like the childish style of the last century. Boss Luo leaned against the guardrail in front of the balcony and asked curiously, "What's the matter? You said that I can't go up." Lamias shrugged and said, "Your big house is so quiet. I think you are a person who likes quietness, so I can only choose this method. After all, there are so many rooms, but only this one seems to be occupied." He was on the balcony and she was in the courtyard. She raised her head and he lowered his head. The night was bleak. The temperature in the suburbs was lower than in the town, so the air was condensed with mist. The smell of grass filled the air. Boss Luo felt that this kind of conversation was quite interesting, so he smiled and said, Why are you looking for me, Ms. Lamias? Let's get straight to the point. Lamias had simulated the conversation with the young master of the manor many times and finally came up with a plan. That was why she threw a stone. I want to know why you know about the holy relic of reversal. Because I have some special information channels, Boss Luo said casually, but this information came at a price. It was exchanged with life and time. Of course, he did not care about the consumption of this kind of information. After all, it was not related to the big secret of all the subworlds and the dimensional crevices. As expected, Lamias was shocked. She was even sure of something, so she continued to raise her head and asked, "You are from the Magician Association?" "No." "No." Lamias frowned and pondered for a moment before saying, "You came here for that thing?" She was testing, that thing, whether the other party knew or not. Such a tone would always attract the other party's interest. That thing, anyone would be curious about such a tone. "Hey, do you know about that thing?" "What thing?" "Oh. I wonder what that thing that Ms. Lamias is talking about is," Boss Luo asked curiously, his eyes glowing with interest. Lamias suddenly asked, "What do you think of this town?" "It's a good place," Boss Luo said casually. "Calm, peaceful, friendly, it's a very suitable place for a vacation." "Other than that?" Lamias blinked and guided him step by step. "That's right, it's like a paradise. It's hard to even feel that there's any evil here. Even if there's some fighting and causing trouble occasionally, it's only because the young people are curious and naughty. They're not bad at all." Boss Luo smiled and said, "What are you trying to say?" Lamias said seriously, "Do you know about petitioners? You must know, after all, you even know about the holy relic of reversal." "So?" Lamias said slowly, "In this town, the probability of producing petitioners is much higher than any other place. It's even comparable to the headquarters of the Holy Church. So, don't you suspect something?" "You mean, this town has a way to turn people into petitioners?" "It's a way to make petitioners." Lamias smiled and said, "Or rather, there's something that makes the people born in this town purer than those born in the outside world, and makes the people living here purer. Maybe it's just because the people here are simple and honest," Boss Luo said casually. "University," Lamias said calmly. "University students are not born and raised in this town, they're almost all from other places. But after these people graduate, they can still produce petitioners, but the probability is much lower, because, after they graduate, they leave this town." "Miss Lamias, you said just now. Let's get straight to the point." "We suspect, no," Lamias suddenly said in a deep voice. "We speculate that there's something in this town that is continuously transforming or cultivating the souls of the people living in this town, so that they can reach the standard of becoming petitioners, or even get close to this standard. And this thing is very likely to be a holy relic." "I'm not interested in the holy relic for the time being." Boss Luo shook his head. "If you're interested, I might not return your pendant to you so soon." Hearing this, Lamias couldn't help but ridicule. How could this guy describe this kind of robber's behavior so righteous and upright? "But I'm interested," Lamias said directly. "So, I want to ask you to help me get the thing that can transform the souls of this town's residents." Boss Luo said, "Miss Lamias, why are you so sure that I can help you? Also, you said we just now, why don't you go and help your companions?" "Of course, there are some special reasons," Lamias said indifferently. "This matter can only be done by me alone. The rules don't say that I can't ask for external help. I'm easily subdued by you." Boss Luo shook his head. "You don't have to do it yourself." Lamias naturally didn't believe his nonsense. "You can ask your servant to do it. I can feel that the servant girl named Eve has extraordinary abilities. Don't worry, I won't let you do it for nothing. The world is so big, I'm sure you can find something that interests you." "I admit," Boss Luo nodded. "There is indeed something that interests me at the moment." "Tell me," Lamias said bluntly. I can give you something that even magician won't refuse. For example? Lamia suddenly said, What do you think of me? I mean, how do you think of me compared to an inhuman? With all due respect, Miss Lamias, you're just an ordinary person. Boss Luo said indifferently, whether it's mentally or physically, you're not beyond the scope of an ordinary person. She didn't care at all and nodded. Yes, I'm indeed an ordinary person, but look carefully. As she said, Lamia slowly squatted in front of Boss Luo and pressed her palm on the ground. She didn't do anything, but a faint light circle suddenly appeared on the ground. In the light circle, a few rays of light intertwined like lightning. After a while, Lamia's withdrew her palm. But at this time, she was holding a black stick about 20 centimeters long and half a finger thick. Extracting the iron element from the soil. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Your spiritual power is not high, obviously it's not a superpower, but you can control metals, interesting ability. Facing the unfathomable Lamias, Boss Luo suddenly stretched out his palm. A small black stick suddenly stretched out from the soil and grew crazily, reaching the height of the balcony where he was standing. Luochu stretched out his hand and flicked the black stick lightly. Suddenly there was a metallic sound. He shook his head. It's not difficult, and it's not enough to interest me at the moment. Lamia's proud expression suddenly became stiff. She opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. So angry. But immediately, a blazing light burst out from her eyes. This manor owner is really not simple. She suddenly laughed. No, this is not the ability to control metals. This is alchemy. What you saw just now is an ability called refine. The basic principle is equivalent exchange. Drawing a refining array, then you can create anything through refining. Refining this iron stick is just a demonstration. In fact, I can refine other things. With that, Lamias put her hands together again and pressed them on the soil. This time, a stone pillar appeared from the soil about 1 foot high. Boss Luo knew about alchemy. How could he not know? Miss Maid's body was the crystallization of alchemy. But the alchemy that Lamias performed seemed to be quite different from the alchemy of this world. The key point was, she had no magic power. So, this was a completely different concept from the alchemy of this world, but it had the same effect, and it could be used by ordinary people. Very interesting. Boss Luo nodded at this time. This was not an ability that should be in this subworld number 003. Just like Nan Xiaonan's star creation technique to create star creation creatures. I don't believe you won't take the bait. Lamias smiled faintly at this moment. This refined ability came from another world. How could this not make people feel surprised? Even the most brilliant magician couldn't ignore this refining ability that violated the existing system. Lamias didn't even forget how shocked the higher-ups of the Cultivation Association were when they saw this kind of miraculous refining ability from that extraterrestrial visitor. I can help you. Boss Luo smiled at this time, but it's just a help, it won't necessarily succeed. The price is that you have to explain this alchemy to me. What do you think? Okay. This was not beyond Lamias's expectation. She nodded, feeling very satisfied. Of course, teaching was not a problem. But whether she could learn it or not, she didn't promise at the beginning, right? Chapter 1598. The full name of alchemy should be a structural alchemy. According to the visitor from the outer space, a structural alchemy was the mainstream in his world. All alchemists used alchemy that could deconstruct everything to achieve the effect of matter replacement. In simple terms, it was the ability to decompose and then reconstruct matter. However, this so-called simple term was no different from an incredible field for the entire Black Order. Deconstruct everything? Mainstream science couldn't deconstruct everything. Alchemy? Replacement of matter? Replacement reaction, of course a group of researchers in the Black Order knew about it, but how could a circular array be able to replace matter? Where did the energy come from? These were all unknowns. Therefore, when the visitor personally demonstrated this technology in front of the higher-ups of the Black Order, those higher-ups who had been immersed in their own academic field for decades were stunned on the spot. The visitor from the outer space, a powerful human from another world, because he was affected by a sudden disaster during his time travel, he fell in this place. Not only this ability called the structural alchemy, but the origin of this visitor from the outer space was already incredible. This was a scene that only appeared in fantasy or movies. But thinking about it, if an human who could exist and live openly in the modern world, then parallel worlds and other worlds didn't seem to be particularly difficult to accept. Originally, such a theory had been proposed a long time ago. Regardless of whether it was true or not, the Black Order did obtain enough benefits from this visitor from the outer space, such as this ability of the structural alchemy. While recalling the origin of the structural alchemy, Lamias briefly introduced the basic situation of this new power. In a side hall of the manor, Lamias asked for some paper and pen from Boss Luo and began to teach by example. She was a physics teacher in a university, so her teaching experience was not bad. At this time, she quickly entered the role of a teacher. Speaking of which, one of them was a freshman in a divinity school, and the other was a physics teacher in the same university. However, in the middle of the night, a female teacher was teaching in a male student's home. The situation was not as bad as imagined. Refinement is basically the power of the circle. The circle represents the cycle of power. By drawing a construction pattern in the circle and sending it into the caster's mind, the power of the refinement array can be activated and the refinement will proceed. With that said, Lamias placed the pencil on the draft paper. In an instant, the pencil turned into a small piece of graphite and a small piece of wood. Circle? Boss Luo looked seriously at the draft that Lamias had drawn on the white paper. The circle, and the patterns and symbols in the circle, when combined together, can produce replacement energy? You can interpret it that way. Lamias nodded. She didn't have much experience with this young manor owner being able to find the key point so quickly. After all, in her knowledge, the other party was a mysterious magician. The alchemy formation was similar to the magic spells that magicians often used. Back then, when the guest from another world was teaching alchemy, it was also some of the magicians in the religious order who were the first to understand it. Boss Luo glanced at it for a while, then took a fountain pen and drew a circle full of symbols on another piece of white paper according to Lamias's draft, without any mistake. However, when he placed the pencil on the circle that he drew, there was no reaction. The circle needs to be drawn with spiritual power. Lamias smiled at this time, as if she had found a chance to gain the upper hand in the failure of the other party's experiment. However, she didn't completely show this emotion. Instead, she said patiently, "Although I'm an ordinary person, I can also meditate on this circle in my spiritual world. You can understand it this way. The circle is equivalent to an omnipotent formula. You can only use it to solve the problem if you understand the definition of this formula." Lamias took a new pencil and lightly tapped on the draft paper. "So, it seems very simple, but you need to practice continuously to simulate this circle in your mind until you can communicate with it." This was how the religious order taught. That was also how the visitor from outer space taught. However, in addition to understanding the existence of the circle, there was another thing that needed to be replicated. That was to sign a contract with the visitor from outer space to be able to use the power of the circle. The religious order had already analyzed this situation very carefully. Composition alchemy was an ability that came from another world. The visitor from outer space was equivalent to the adapter of this ability. Only after signing a contract with the visitor from outer space could one connect with the law of the composition alchemy of the other world through him. From then on, this strange ability of the other world could be realized in this modern world. Without the visitor from outer space as an adapter, even if one completely understood the essence of the circle, under the will of this modern world, one would not be able to use the circle to turn water into ice. Therefore, Lamia's was not stingy. Instead, she was very detailed and even did not care to teach everything she learned. She knew that if one did not sign a contract with the visitor from outer space, this knowledge and theory were just pure imagination. It was not too late to let the visitor meditate. In order to buy time, Lamia's had already made a very detailed calculation in her heart. At this time, seeing the young manor owner staring at the draft paper in a daze, Lamia's had a hint of joy in her heart. Sure enough, even the powerful inhuman had times when they were useless. To put it bluntly, a inhuman was a human who had mastered the power. As long as one could grasp the weakness of human nature, even if one was just an ordinary person, one could also contend with a inhuman. At this time, Boss Luo. How could he not learn it? It was impossible that he could not learn it. It was impossible that he could not learn it. He had learned the star creation technique, right? It was not necessary for him to master composition alchemy. He just wanted to experience this ability. This ability probably came from another subworld, just like Nan Xiaonan and 24. 24 had mentioned that in addition to him, there were several strong people who were exploring the dimensional crevices. Because of a spacetime shock, they fell into subworld 003. Don't worry, Lamia's said more patiently at this time. I also practiced for a long time at that time. This requires patience. Now, I will give you a basic lesson on the basic principles of alchemy. Generally speaking, this is actually a process of understanding, breaking down, and reconstructing. We know that every substance has its fixed molecular arrangement. So, you first need to. How did you do it? Her beautiful big eyes were filled with shock, as if she had seen an alien. At this time, on the draft paper drawn by Boss Luo, the process of composition alchemy appeared directly in front of Lamia's eyes. The other pencil was now on the circle of the draft paper, breaking down into its original material. This was not the method that the young manor owner used to lift the iron element from the soil before, because there was obviously a reaction of composition on the draft paper. In a split second, numerous thoughts flashed through Lamia's mind. That extraterrestrial visitor had said that he was the only one who was mastering this ability. Without him, there would not be a second person in the world who could use the ability of structural alchemy. Could it be that this manor owner was related to the alien? No. When the alien was discovered, he was seriously injured. After being rescued by the religious order, he had been living in seclusion in the religious order's headquarters and had never left. There were only a few possibilities. The manor master was indeed related to the guest from beyond the heavens, but the guest from beyond the heavens had concealed this matter. Or, the composition alchemy did not need to be signed with the alien to use it like what he said. Others could also use it. This kind of power could actually be used in the real world? If that was the case, the entire religious order could become that guy's tool because of this lie. During this period of time, in order to allow more members to use the composition alchemy ability, the religious order was very satisfied with this alien, to the extent that it was to the point of giving him whatever he wanted. This should be different from what you understand, Miss Lamia's. Boss Luo shook his head at this time. I just used a trick and used other means to activate the ability of this circle. So it is different from the ability you activated. The key is this circle itself. It has already touched upon some of the most basic things. Miss Lamia's? At this time, Lamia's looked at him with uncertainty. Boss Luo immediately shook his head. Of course, you can't learn this trick at the moment. There's nothing that can't be learned. Lamia's eyes were burning at this time. In this world, there are only two kinds of people who can learn and don't. As long as there is a method, then one day, 2 generations, several generations, there will be one person who can learn it. That's true. Boss Luo nodded. Time was the biggest cheat that could turn anything impossible into possible. Teach me. Lamias took a deep breath at this time. You can ask for anything. As long as I can do it, I will do anything. Luochu said, but, Miss Lamias, don't you already know how to use this ability? Lamias gritted her teeth and said, you don't have to care about this. I just want to know what this trick is. It's very important to me. Luochu said indifferently, there is still a deal between you and me. Let's finish what you said earlier, Miss Lamias. After being rejected, Lamias was not too disappointed. She actually expected that the other party would not agree at once. The other party didn't agree because what she could give at present was not enough to attract the other party. She firmly believed that there was nothing in this world that couldn't be exchanged. Everything had its own price. Although she didn't get this trick method, Lamias couldn't help but be really happy in her heart. At least, she knew that there were other ways to achieve this composition alchemy technique besides the extraterrestrial visitor, and it was feasible. Lamias, you must succeed this mission. This is the last chance for me to fight for it. If you fail, then the Cultivation Association can only decide to send you to the hands of the Master. The Master has named you for a long time. You know, we need this ability. It's the opportunity for us to really rise. There's no rush now. The operation to capture Father Stella may not fail. Also, it's unknown who will get the holy relic. Even if I fail, I still have the possibility to use the composition alchemy from another way through this manor owner. No, if the capture fails, I must get this way. What else can I do? During this period, I should pay attention to all the preferences of this manor owner. I should cater to his preferences. I don't believe that he's not interested in anything. No, maybe I can send this information back. In the Cultivation Association, there are already people who can't stand the extraterrestrial visitors' unscrupulous behavior. If it weren't for the fact that the extraterrestrial visitor has been using the ability contract as a threat, this part of the opposition wouldn't be so passive. They will be my backing. They can help me deal with a group of people who worship the extraterrestrial visitor like a god. If it all fails, I'll just rebel against the Cultivation Association and go into exile. I will definitely not be treated as a plaything and sent to the extraterrestrial visitor's hands. Thinking about it, Lamias fell into a deep sleep. Although she used the power of the contract to refine the array, it still consumed her own spiritual power. She was just a normal person's spiritual power. In a luxurious room in a dark underground building, two beautiful women were tied to a pillar in a shameful position. Their snow-white bodies were covered with deep and shallow whip scars. On the big bed in the luxurious room, there was another woman with lifeless eyes lying on the bed. Her hands and feet were tied to the four corners of the bed. Her teeth had been pulled out long ago, and she had completely lost the ability to commit suicide. A fat man with one big and one small eyes and a rather bloated body just came out of the bathroom. He glanced at the three women in the room and instantly frowned. The women sent by those guys are getting more and more unplayable. Chimeras are still more comfortable to use. The man sneered a few times. At this moment, someone knocked on the door of the luxurious room. The man walked to the door rather impatiently. A golden-haired youth was standing respectfully outside the door. Seeing the fat man open the door and come out, he immediately said humbly, "Master Pride." "What's the matter?" The fat man, Master Pride, replied impatiently. The golden-haired youth lowered his head and said, "It's like this. The meeting time at the research lab hasn't passed yet, so they asked me to come and see you. I'm not in the mood today, so I won't be going." Master Pride snorted coldly and said, "Also, send me a few more toys. I like that Lamias, so send her over today too." The golden-haired youth still had his head lowered and said, "Master, I'll arrange the toys for you very soon, but I'm afraid Lamias won't be able to come today." "Why?" Master Pride's gaze turned cold. The golden-haired youth said, Lamia's is out on a mission, so she won't be able to come back for a while. I hope you can understand, Master. We'll definitely send you a satisfactory toy. That better be the case. Master Pudili sneered, remember? Without my human body refinement technique, with the techniques you have now, you won't be able to revive that thing even after 1,000 years. You're right, Master, the golden-haired youth said hurriedly. Asterisk bang. Asterisk the door slammed shut. Only then did the golden-haired youth raise his head, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. It's good to have power. Even trash like this can act recklessly. Chapter 1599. After a night's rest. In the room, the black armor started from Lamia's neckline. Pieces of armor separated from the middle and retracted to the back of her neck. Finally, there was only a nail-sized lump attached to the back of her neck. She reached out and touched her abdomen and ribs. Her face showed a hint of relief, but it quickly turned into a serious expression. The armor has completed its self-repair. Thanks to Eve's surgery, I used the armor's built-in healing technique and recovered almost all of it in one go. Now, I can engage in high-intensity combat at any time. But, however, she had already attacked Father Stella once. Looking at the situation now, the Holy Church would definitely strengthen their defenses. The fallen energy field of the reverse holy relic had also been exposed. The next time she wanted to deal with the Holy Knight Wasco, it would not be so easy. Of course, Lamia's did not think that Wasco would be able to find a way to resist the fallen energy field in such a short time. She at least had some buffer time before the Holy Church's main force arrived. In fact, she wanted to succeed in one go. But she did not expect that Father Stella was not affected by the fallen energy field at all. Could it be that Stella's holy power is a mutated holy power, so he is not affected by the fallen energy field? Lamia's thoughts turned quickly. If this guess was close to the truth, then it seemed to explain why the quality of Stella's holy power was so high that it could be said to be the best in the Holy Church. This time, the operation to capture Stella had been exposed. The Holy Church would definitely investigate the inside. After all, Father Stella lived in seclusion in this seaside town. It was a highly confidential matter of the Holy Church. Not many people knew about it. If this capture is successful, then it's fine. If it fails, I'm afraid that the spy that the congregation has sent to the Holy Church over the years will be exposed. Once the spy is exposed, the losses will be hard to calculate, and it will be difficult for me to absolve myself from the blame. I'm afraid that no one will speak up for me, and it's only a matter of time before I'm sent to Master Pride. In fact, if that Master Pride was a little more normal, Lamia's wouldn't be too against it. The Western world had always been more open when it came to the matters between men and women, not to mention that the Black Order was a reverse cross, which was naturally different from the Holy Church's method of maintaining purity. What they did was to maintain the purity of their hearts. Their filthy bodies would be sublimated in their hearts, and their souls would be purified in an instant. That was why Lamia's didn't reject this act of charity. But Master Pride was an extremely twisted and tyrannical person. Lamia's was well aware of how the girls who had been toyed with until they had completely lost their qualifications to be human were sent out and then discarded. It was not a problem for them to submit themselves to a powerful existence, and it would be even better if they were as modest as this young manor master. Was he going to jump into the purgatory abyss even though he knew it was there? At this time, Eve knocked on the door and came in with some breakfast. You seem to be in good spirits, Miss Lamia's. It's all thanks to your superb surgical skills, Miss Eve. Lamia's smiled. She didn't take the fact that she had pulled out a gun and shot at Eve yesterday seriously. I'm just following my master's orders, Eve said calmly. She then put down the breakfast and was about to turn around and leave. Lamia's suddenly said, Miss Eve, why would an excellent woman like you willingly submit yourself to this place and serve a man? Lamia's was no stranger to the profession of a maid. Many rich families in the world would have maids, and many of them would even take care of their master's special needs in addition to taking care of their master's daily needs. If it was a normal person, it would be normal for them to bow down in front of money. But the other party was an inhuman. She would not submit to simple money. Lamias could see that this Eve was really humble. As a woman, Lamias had an almost instinctive resistance to this kind of humility. "You don't know the greatness of my master." Eve turned around, shook her head slightly, and said, "His existence is beyond the limits of what you can understand. Being able to serve master is my only glory." Lamias opened her mouth. The resistance in her heart was getting stronger and stronger. But she still had a favor to ask of Eve, so she had to suppress the strange feeling in her heart. "We should live for ourselves," she said firmly. "No one has the right to control us." Eve's eyes suddenly flashed, but she said calmly, "One day, when you are controlled by my master, you will realize how foolish you are now. But unfortunately, based on your current situation, the possibility of you being controlled by my master is almost zero." As Lamias listened, she felt that something was wrong. This inhuman called Eve must have been brainwashed. "Why does it sound like it is right for me to be controlled?" Shaking her head, Lamias instantly lost interest in arguing with Eve. She would never be able to wake up that person who was pretending to be asleep. Perhaps she would wake up one day when she found out that the master of the manor that she worshipped like a god could also be injured, die, and cower in front of other stronger people. "I'm fine now." With that thought, Lamias said directly, "According to the agreement I made with your master last night, I want to make a move tonight. Go and tell him. We will meet at the town square at 6 in the evening. I still have some things to do, so I have to leave first." With that, Lamias went out of the door and left the manor. She was not afraid that the other party would break his promise and not come. As for this kind of not worrying or even confidence, it was a mysterious feeling. That guy didn't even care about a treasure like the holy relic of reversal. He probably wouldn't break his promise, she thought. Town church. Yahweh, which was in ruins yesterday, was once again as good as new overnight. Other than the paint that was not completely dry, it was basically in good condition. With such efficiency, it was only natural that the 4 Holy Night trainees worked tirelessly. Of course, they did not get paid. Even the materials were provided by themselves. "Stella, it's about time to say something." In the newly tidied backyard of the church, Father Stella, who was basking in the sun while stroking his cat, was greeted by the shadow of Wasco. "What should I say?" the priest asked knowingly. The veteran Holy Knight held back his anger and said, "What's up with your holy power? Why is it not affected by the holy relic of reversal?" "Because I'm stronger," the priest said seriously. "All these years I've been training every day. 10 years ago, I came here as a wandering monk from the East. I learned a mystical training method called the Pure Yang martial arts. As long as you hang a 10-kilogram weight on your brother's body every day for half an hour, in less than half a year, you will definitely be able to reap the benefits. So don't look at my age now, I'm still a pillar supporting the sky every day." He really wanted to slap this B***tch who was full of nonsense to death. But they were at most the same level, and it was hard to say who would win if they really fought. But if it was in the fallen energy field, there was no doubt that he would lose completely, right? This made Wasco vaguely worried. He couldn't explain it clearly. "Fine, if you don't say it, I won't force you now." Wasco sighed. Although he had a lot of doubts in his heart, he was there when Stella burst out his holy power. Stella's holy power was really pure, so he dismissed the thought of secretly guessing that Stella might have fallen. "But from now on, you can't even take half a step out of the church," Wasco said solemnly. "If necessary, I may forcibly take you back to the Holy Church headquarters. The Black Order's target is you. We can't let you stay here and wait for the Black Order to come and deal with you." Huff, huff, with the sound of snoring, The priest had fallen into a deep sleep under the umbrella. Wasco couldn't help but shake his head and leave with an irritated expression. Just as the Holy Knight Wasco was feeling irritated in the room, a reserve Holy Knight hurried in and said something that made the guests of the Holy Church feel shocked. What? The 12 Knights of the Night Mechanism are here? And they're right outside? Yes. The reserve Holy Knight who came to inform said nervously, "It seems to be the Clown Knight." The Clown Knight, Dagonet? Wasco pondered for a moment and nodded. I'll go and meet the 12 Knights of Britain. The Holy Knights of the Holy Church and the 12 Knights of the Round Table had always been a topic of discussion in the inhuman world. It was nothing more than which side was more powerful, which side had more achievements, and so on. It had always been a 3-to-7 ratio, and the Holy Church had always had the advantage, until 100 years ago, when Farrell of Britain came out of nowhere and directly took the title of the strongest knight. Therefore, Wasco could not be polite in front of Dagonet, and probably would not be in his next life. "Yo, Mr. Wasco, long time no see." Dagonet greeted the unfriendly Wasco like a gentleman. "It's been 3 years since we last met in the holy capital of the Holy Church. Mr. Wasco, you're still as handsome as ever. I heard that the Holy Knights of the Holy Church often use a kind of holy oil to train their bodies, which can strengthen their physique and endurance during fight. It seems that it's true. When can you give me a few kilograms of it? My waist hasn't been very good recently." The Paladin camp of the Paladins 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 of the Paladins. Mr. Clown blinked his eyes and said faintly like a wronged wife, "Mr. Wasco, this is Britain after all. You brought a few reserve holy knights to our country without reporting. I'm a security guard. Can't I even ask about it now? That won't do. We have to be fair. How about I sneak into the holy city some other day? If you dare to come, don't go back." Wasco sneered. Farrell was indeed powerful. Although Wasco did not say it, he knew in his heart. But only Farrell was powerful. Without Farrell, the British chivalry was like a wingless man. Now, the knight organization was weak. Most of the members at the 12 round tables were rookies who had been trained for the past 10 years. They did not have a strong foundation, so the Holy Church did not treat them as a threat at all. They just maintained this superficial courtesy. There were many churches in Britain, and the Holy Church's influence had long infiltrated. "Then I'd better not go." The Clown Knight shrunk his neck and said, "After all, the pension in our country is not high. There's no need to die bravely." Why was he the same as that bitch Stella? Wasco was startled, and then said indifferently, "I just brought a few reserve holy knights to travel around the countries to train them. When I passed by here, I accidentally encountered the criminals of the Black Order, so there was some conflict. But we'll take care of it ourselves. There's no need to trouble the knight organization. Don't worry, we'll leave after we've taken care of things here." "That's great," Dagonet suddenly said with a smile. "It seems that I'm in luck. I came here on a business trip to investigate the Black Order. Mr. Wasco, you're going to deal with the guys from the religious order here. I'm going to hug the thigh of the Holy Church. I'm going to stay here tonight." "What, you're going to stay here? See, I've brought my luggage." The Clown Knight pointed at the luggage behind him. "I've always admired the culture of the Holy Church." "Oh right, I heard that the Holy Church's benefits are very good. Is it true that the reserve Holy Knights are accompanied by female university students? If it's true, then I'll apply as an exchange student. Mr. Wasco, are you interested in sending me back? Actually, my grandmother's cousin is also a devout believer, and I have faith in me too." What the hell? Was this really the 12 Knights of the Round Table who uphold the virtues of the knights? How come this guy looked so serious when the Queen of Britain came to the Holy City for a state visit 3 years ago? "Mr. Wasco?" Seeing the 12 Knights of the Night organization walking into the church with great enthusiasm, the Holy Knights did not know whether to stop him or not, so they looked at him with a troubled expression. Wasco frowned and thought for a while. Go, arrange a room for him. This is Britain's territory, we have to give him some face. Okay. I'll go right away. The young reserve Holy Knight nodded. Yes. Chapter 1600. In fact, the Academy had arranged a residence for each of the teachers. Lamias, the star teacher of the composition and physics department, was naturally no exception. Moreover, this was an independent house with relatively good conditions. After returning to the house, Lamias hurried back to her bedroom. She quickly found her teacher's certificate on the table. As expected, Lamias shook her head, confirming that the owner of the manor didn't know her name through the teacher's certificate at the beginning. But what could she do even if she proved it? Nothing much. She took a deep breath, then took out her phone and sent a message to the Dean of Teaching, who was also a spy. Only then did she turn on her laptop. The communication was private, using a satellite in the sky. On the surface, the satellite was owned by a certain country, but in the dark it served the Black Order. Unlike the Holy Church, which had shown its divinity in front of people for thousands of years, the Dark Sisterhood, as a faith that existed in the shadows, had always been developing in silence in that country, which only had a history of a little over 100 years. The country's national strength could be said to be the highest in the modern world. Because it only had a history of a little over 100 years, the Holy Church's foundation in that land was unable to influence the national policy. A dark red inverted cross appeared on the screen of the laptop. Not long after, the only thing left on the screen was the pale face of a middle-aged woman. Katerina. In front of this middle-aged woman, Lamias appeared very serious, even though there was a great distance between them, even though they were separated by a screen. Lamias. The woman on the screen. Katerina had a smile on her face. I heard that your first operation to capture Stella failed, and after that, fortunately, after going missing for 11 hours, you finally contacted me. I'm sorry, I missed out on Stella's ability in this operation. Lamias quickly said, the power of the holy relic of reversal is unquestionable. The Holy Church's Iron Fist Wasco could only exert less than 30% of his power in the fallen force field. However, Stella wasn't affected in the slightest. This is something that has never appeared in our intelligence system, nor has it ever been estimated. Now I know. Katerina frowned. He's not affected by the force field, huh? Stella, it seems that he has indeed abandoned his original faith. Lamias said in surprise, abandoned faith? If he gave up his faith, how could he gather such a huge amount of saint energy? No, what I'm saying is that he abandoned his original faith. I'm not saying that he has completely abandoned his faith. Katerina shook her head. This is a rather complicated problem regarding the source of power. It's a battle of faith. You haven't really stepped into the inhuman stage, so I can't explain it to you in detail now. Lamias was silent, but her fingers clenched into fists under the table. She was not as good as inhuman. Should we change the next step? Lamias suddenly asked. Katerina asked, what do you think? I plan to continue with the mission of capturing Stella, Lamias said resolutely. Katerina was stunned for a moment before she said, it's rare to see you staking everything on a single throw. It seems that the new faction is indeed giving you a lot of pressure. Katerina's face seemed to have a hint of sadness when she said this. It's a pity that more and more people from the old faction are turning to the new faction. Now, under the madness of the new faction, it's getting harder and harder for us to maintain. That visitor from another world is really... Katerina. Lamias took a deep breath and suddenly said, I might have found a way to let us use alchemy without using Pride's ability. What? On the other side, Katerina was unable to maintain her calm. She lost her composure and said, do you know the seriousness of this matter? Lamias, I hope this is true. It's true, I saw it with my own eyes. Lamias quickly said, I met a mysterious magician here. He might be a free magician, or he might be someone hidden by the Magician Association. Anyway, this guy obviously doesn't exist on our list of people we're paying attention to. His origin is very mysterious, and I saw with my own eyes that he used the alchemy formation to complete an alchemy process in front of me. I'm very sure that he definitely didn't sign an alchemy agreement with Pride. He used his own method to activate the sphere's power. Pride has been going out ever since he entered the religious order, and he hasn't contacted anyone from the outside world. I can guarantee this. It's just that. Katerina's eyes suddenly focused. Lamias, you leaked one of the religious order's top secrets to an outsider. If I can find another way, then it'll offset my crime of leaking secrets. Lamias had thought about everything. She only needed the support of the religious order. Enough time for her to obtain a new way. Silence. I can do my best to help you. Katerina nodded and said, but I hope you won't be too late. The new faction has been getting more and more anxious recently. What else do you need besides time? Lamias thought for a while and said, I'm still thinking of a way to obtain a new alchemy way from him. But his origin is too mysterious, and it seems very difficult to move him. She didn't dare to say that the Manor Master even knew about the holy relic of reversal like the back of his hand. This was information that could make Katerina, who was far away on the other side of the ocean, feel uneasy. Magicians have always been a group of neurotic people, and it's indeed very difficult to move them. Katerina thought for a while and said, Don't worry, no matter what you need, I'll do my best to help you. If we can get a new way, then we don't need to continue worshipping Pride as a god. The new faction is still too young. I don't dare to use any method, but Lamias, you must obtain this new way, and at the same time thoroughly investigate the origin of this magician. In short, you must be careful. Understood. Lamias nodded. Katerina was the mainstay of the old faction, and with her promise, Lamias felt a lot more relieved. It was as if the fog in front of her had been peeled away, and she had found a new direction. You went missing after the battle yesterday, and in view of Stella's abnormal combat strength, I've already sent the combat nuns to support you. Katerina said with a serious expression, since the new way of alchemy is already in sight, then we can slowly work on it. But the most important thing now is to capture a high-quality source of holy power. For this we've been dormant for 100 years, and we've been preparing for 100 years. We can't afford any mistakes. Understood. Lamias closed the notebook and sighed. Her body leaned completely against the back of the chair, and she muttered to herself, I'm afraid that for me, obtaining a new way of alchemy is the real first priority. This is my final trump card to protect myself. With the current internal situation, I'm afraid that even Katerina won't be able to hold on for too long. Don't disappoint me. She thought of the young Manor Master. Looking at the time, it was almost the appointed time. Boss Luo had always been a punctual person. Not only was he punctual, but he would also arrive early. At 5:45, in the town square, Boss Luo was holding a bag of bread in his hand and feeding the pigeons in the square. A large group of fat pigeons had gathered around him. Because of their bloated bodies, the pigeons seemed to have difficulty walking. At this time, the roaring sound of an engine was heard. A black motorcycle drove directly into the square. The motorcycle was like a giant beast, and the pigeons were frightened and wanted to escape. However, they were too fat. Even if they flew up, they could only fly a few meters high before falling to the ground again. In the end, they fled clumsily in all directions. On the black motorcycle, Lamias stretched out her legs to stabilize the motorcycle. Then she took off her helmet, and her long hair fell like a waterfall. You're in a good mood. You even have time to feed the pigeons here. Boss Luo just smiled and handed the food to her, Do you want to try it? Lamia's opened her mouth, but she thought that she had to establish a good relationship with him to obtain new alchemy method. Therefore, she had to take the food and scatter some bread crumbs on the ground. A group of pigeons that were not afraid of death immediately surrounded them again. Some people say that the pigeons that stay in the square usually don't live long, Luochu said with a slight smile. Lamias thought for a while and said, "It can't be. Humans like them because they are a symbol of peace. They are reluctant to hurt them and will even feed them. It's much safer here than in the wild." Most of the pigeons that would not be hurt were only in the West. If it was in China, it would be a different situation. After all, Boss Luo also liked to eat braised pigeons. This was just a distraction. Boss Luo pointed at the pigeons on the ground and said, "Look at them, they are generally much fatter than the ones in the wild. Do you know why?" Lamias looked at the pigeons on the ground and frowned. They know that people will feed them here, so they don't leave and don't need to look for food. They just need to stay nearby. Over time, more and more people come to feed them, and they have more food. They lack exercise, and in a comfortable situation, they won't fly anymore. Even walking becomes difficult because of their weight. In the end, they will die of obesity? Boss Luo smiled and said, "If there are no rules, they will follow their appetite and keep eating. They will grow and eventually become like this." Lamias also smiled and said, "I will be the one who sets the rules." The big clock in the square rang at 6 o'clock in the evening. The pigeons were startled again and ran away comically. Boss Luo said, "It's time, shall we go now? Get on." Lamias stepped on the clutch and the motorcycle engine roared. She threw a helmet at Boss Luo and said, "Sit behind me." Thinking about the scene of sitting on it, Boss Luo looked at the helmet in his hand for a few seconds and suddenly said, "If the destination is the church, why not gather at the church at the beginning? I'll go there and wait for you, Miss Lamias." Seeing the other party disappear in an unbelievable way in front of her, only the helmet on the ground was dazzling. Lamias was stunned and speechless. He didn't get on? At night, Mr. Clown was wandering around the church. A few reserve holy knights would occasionally appear in various parts of the church and do some miscellaneous things. It was obvious that they were monitoring the church. Both parties were well aware of it. "Who is living inside?" Mr. Clown asked a female reserve holy knight who was sweeping the floor in front of him. She was unwilling to leave even though there was not a speck of dust on the floor. "He is a friend of Father Stella. He said that he is temporarily staying here." The female reserve holy knight told him the little information she knew. She felt that the moment one of the 12 knights of Britain grabbed her hand, her heart began to beat faster. Oh no, it was the feeling of being in love. Different from the male students in the Holy Church's Paladin camp who only had muscles in their heads, the graceful Mr. Clown brought her a strange sense of novelty. "My Lotta?" Dagonet, who knew the name of the person living in the storeroom, was thoughtful. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Otherwise, Father Stella would probably not take the risk of another attack by the Black Order and put an ordinary friend here. But the windows and doors of the storeroom were closed. The curtains were even drawn. Only occasionally, the curtains could be seen swaying. The eyes inside were probably carefully hidden and looking at everything outside. "I heard that the Pope of the Holy Church is old, and his body has been deteriorating recently. There is a rumor that the most popular Cardinal Torres will be the next Pope, right?" The female reserve holy knight was not blinded by the sudden love. She directly lowered her head and walked away with the broom in a panic. Mr. Clown did not seem to mind that this foreign love ended as soon as it started. He smiled and walked to the door of the storeroom. With his superhuman hearing, he could easily hear the footsteps in the room. At this moment, he suddenly stopped. Today's weather is so good. The fire and the clouds are so beautiful. After Mr. Clown inexplicably sighed, he slowly left. The curtains of the storeroom were opened a little, and a pair of eyes looked at the sunset outside. The bright red clouds looked like dripping blood. Father Stella did not seem to mind that there was one of the 12 Knights of Britain in the house. When he cooked dinner, it was quite sumptuous. But my Lotta did not appear during dinner. At the dinner table, in order to welcome Mr. Clown who came from afar, Father Stella even generously took out the happy water produced in September last year for everyone to drink. In the beginning, the atmosphere was quite good. They chatted about everything until Mr. Clown suddenly mentioned something at an inappropriate time. Father Stella, I wonder if you are interested in coming to the night organization to be our special consultant? Mr. Clown raised the cola cup in his hand and said, We really need a talent like you. The Holy Church has no future. The veteran Holy Knight almost spat out the borscht in his mouth. He had seen robberies, but he had never seen robberies in such a fresh and meaningful way. The veteran Holy Knight suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Clown, you are going to lose your life here. Mr. Clown suddenly showed a bitter face. Oh, Your Excellency Wasco, you should know that I am a clown. In order to make the humans happy, this is just a joke. Come, let me show everyone a show. As he spoke, Mr. Clown opened and closed his hands, and 3 red balls appeared in his hand. He tossed them around happily. Good, good, good. It has been a long time since I saw an acrobatic performance. Father Stella even directly clapped his hands and cheered. Wasco resisted the urge to flip the table and planned to leave. Unexpectedly, at this moment, darkness once again covered the surroundings of the church. The depraved force field silently appeared at this moment. Chapter 1601. Black Order. When the field appeared, Wasco was the first to react. The several paladin candidates were elite students who could go out of the training camp to gain experience. At this moment, they reacted very quickly. Almost at the moment when Wasco shouted in a deep voice, a strong holy power burst out. But after all, they had not experienced the horror of the fallen field. As soon as the holy power burst out, the erosion of the fallen field was like a highly toxic poison, causing the several paladin candidates to show a painful expression. Don't use the holy power, Wasco shouted, then crossed his hands in front of him to protect himself, and directly broke out of the window. After the several paladin candidates stopped releasing the holy power, they felt the pain fade away. But if they couldn't use the holy power, they would only be able to use 20% or 30% of their strength. But Dagonet was not affected by the fallen field at all. He looked at the several paladin candidates who didn't look very good, and then looked at Father Stella who was cutting the steak without moving. He suddenly laughed and said, Father, your house is really lively tonight. Yes, they are all lost lambs. Father Stella chewed the beef in big mouthfuls. Lambs should be slaughtered. This doesn't sound like something a kind priest would say, Mr. Clown said with a smile. Father Stella suddenly looked up. Is your night mechanism really going to recruit me? All right then, I'll join in right now and cause trouble for all of you. After your night mechanism has fought a battle with the Black Religious Order and weakened their strength, I reckon they won't be able to find trouble with the Holy Church in the short term. When the several paladin candidates heard this, they all widened their eyes in disbelief. Father, even if you really think so, you shouldn't say it out loud. Father, it seems that you really have deep feelings for the Holy Church. Dagonet didn't seem to be angry at all. Father Stella said expressionlessly, After all, I still have several old lovers in the church, and I have to take care of them more or less. But this time, our friendship is over. The future of the Holy Church has nothing to do with me. The young Holy Knight candidates were shocked once again. This former warden of the Godly Might prison was just as Lord Wasco had said. He had no inhibitions. Dagonet narrowed his eyes and said, What if the night mechanism and the Black Order fight, and the Holy Church invades us on a large scale? What do you plan to say, Father? Not much. Father Stella said resolutely, If the Holy Church sends one, I'll beat one for you. If 2 come, I'll beat both of them. No matter how many come, I'll beat them all back. As long as you continue to pay me and take a break for 360 days a year, I'll work for you until I die of old age." Even Mr. Clown seemed to be a little overwhelmed by such a shameless priest. At this time, he had to say with a look of pity, "Father, why don't you just let the Black Order catch you? You can go directly to the headquarters of the Black Order and wreak havoc there. Wouldn't that be better?" "It's too far," Father Stella said seriously. "My Tom Cruise won't be acclimatized. Come on, I really want to beat you to death, old man." Clown laughed and stood up. Under his smile, there was a murderous intent. The temperature of the whole restaurant seemed to drop by a few degrees. Father Stella sighed and spread out his hands. "You're not my opponent. I don't want to cripple you. What if your queen asks me for medical expenses? My church doesn't have the funds of the Holy Church. The daily expenses are donated by the believers. Look, how many believers can there be in this small place? Don't come over, or I'll kill you with one punch." Dagonet was still smiling, but his figure disappeared in an instant. So fast. A few backup paladins couldn't even catch Dagonet's trace. They couldn't help but feel a chill on their back. But before this kind of fear could spread to their whole body, they were stunned again by the next scene. A figure flew out. There were even a few drops of blood in the air. The Clown Knight. Father Stella sat there and withdrew his fist. He looked at the big hole in the wall that was smashed by Dagonet and said, "I told you not to come over. Seeing that your queen is also a doting person, I won't beat you to death this time." The backup paladins couldn't think at this time. Father Stella sighed at this time and looked kindly at the young men and women. He said earnestly, "Eat, don't waste things. You have to know that every grain is obtained through hard work. As believers of the Lord, you have to learn to be grateful and cherish. You have to know that as a background, you have to have the awareness of being a background. Make more passers-by shocked, so that I can show my power." Why did it feel like the more he talked, the more it felt like something was wrong? "We will go support Lord Wasco." Finally, the backup paladin who was probably the team leader stood up and hurriedly walked out of the cafeteria. He couldn't afford to provoke them, so he slipped away. As he got up, Dagonet subconsciously spat out some blood from his mouth. "That fist is really hard. Even compared to Farlier, it's not much worse. I guess I'm still too weak." Mr. Clown didn't look depressed at all. He looked up and saw that Wasco was already standing on the roof of the church and seemed to be confronting someone. Mr. Clown wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and slowly stood up. The moment he stood up, a low voice sounded, and lines of ancient elven spells began to float on his body. The 12 Knights of the Round Table of Sir Dagonet. How could they not be dressed? Only by wearing the Sir Dagonet's armor of inheritance could they be the real 12 Knights. A dim light flickered, and Dagonet hid in the darkness. At the same time, voices came from the roof. On the roof, Wasco looked solemnly at the woman in the black and orange light armor in front of him, and the young man next to her. Unlike the mysterious woman, the young man next to her didn't seem to have any intention of hiding his appearance. Wasco's mind quickly flashed with some information about the Black Order that the Holy Church had, but he couldn't find any information about this mysterious young man. The fallen force field had completely formed and covered the entire church. The visual radius was about 50 meters, and some residents in the nearby houses were also trapped and instantly fainted. "It seems that yesterday's lesson wasn't enough," Wasco said in a deep voice. "It seems that the Black Church has become arrogant recently. Do you really think that with this fallen force field you can be invincible?" What a mysterious woman. Lamias looked at the young manor owner beside her. For some reason, she felt unprecedentedly confident and said with a smile, "Of course, it's hard to say if I'm facing someone as strong as Sir Wasco who has been training his body for decades, but in the current paladin training camp, how many paladins can train their bodies to the point that they are as tough as steel like you? Not to mention those divine spellcasters with weak bodies to begin with." She actually wanted to say priest, But then she thought that there was a freak like Stella among the priests, so she had to change her words. After all, there was probably only one priest in the entire Holy Church, or else if there were more, there wouldn't be any Black Order. Thank you for taking care of me yesterday. Politeness demands reciprocity. Today let me properly thank you. Wasco was not angry. Although this woman was despicable, he had to admit that what she said was indeed the current situation of the Holy Knight training camp in the Holy Church. My target is only Father Stella. Lamias took a step back. Today, your opponent is not me. As she said that, Lamias whispered to Boss Luo, this old man, I'll leave it to you. You just have to hold him back. Before meeting up with the church and preparing to make a move, she had a short conversation with Boss Luo. This time, the agreement was that Boss Luo would provide some help without guaranteeing Lamias' success. To be more specific, he would do some supporting things. He would not directly attack Father Stella, but he could let Lamias make a choice between Wasco and a few backup Holy Knights. If it wasn't for the fallen force field, those backup Holy Knights might be a threat. However, within the fallen force field, those backup Holy Knights weren't a threat at all. Lamias naturally didn't put them in her eyes. At this moment, Vasco was the biggest obstacle. There was no need to choose. Lamias directly jumped down after asking for his help. Where do you think you're going? Wasco saw this and was instantly furious. At this time, he jumped out at an extremely fast speed. But at this moment, something quietly wrapped around his leg. In an instant, he was pulled back to the roof by a huge force. Wasco looked at the black-haired young man in front of him in shock and anger. Beside him, there was a chain that appeared out of nowhere and bound him. My mission is only to keep Mr. Wasco here for 10 minutes. Boss Luo waved his hand at this time and said, 10 minutes will pass quickly. We don't need to hold hands and just stand there. You don't know what's good for you. Wasco suddenly sighed. His originally furious expression calmed down. He took out a bottle from his body, pinched open the bottle with his fingers, and poured the liquid inside into his mouth. Don't think that this field can restrict me. After saying that, a terrifying wave of holy power burst out from Wasco's body. At the same time, the corrosive force of the fallen energy field instantly infected Wasco's huge holy power. But a miraculous scene happened. The corrosive force of the fallen energy field did not slow down at all, but it still could not corrode Wasco's body. Inside his body, an endless stream of holy power continued to erupt and reached a balance with the corrosive force. Like a layer of protective film, it resisted the corrosive force on the outside. No, it was feeding this corrosive force madly. The more the corrosive force was, the more his body erupted. In the end, it reached a point where it did not affect the use of holy power at all. Of course, this continuous eruption was due to the effect of the Holy Church's secret treasure, the ultra-high concentration of holy water. It was a crazy overdraft of the body's ability. If Wasco had not been training his body crazily for decades, he would not have dared to play like this. This method, although clumsy and simple, was very effective. Before there was a way to break the effects of the fallen energy field, this was enough to allow Wasco to recover to his peak combat power in a short time. 10 minutes? Wasco sneered. He waved his hands, and the 2 layers of armor on his wrists overlapped and instantly covered his fist. I can only accompany you for 10 seconds at most. After saying that, Wasco punched out. The huge amount of holy power even shook the space, but it did not spread to the surroundings. His control of power had obviously reached a very high level. Boss Luo's evaluation of him was that it was about 60 to 70% of the power of the fire cloud evil god from the Kelowna administration when he was not wielding the amber knife. Moreover, Wasco was a pure human, not an inhuman in essence. Among the humans, he was considered the strongest. Boom! The fist that contained a huge amount of holy power at this moment bombarded an invisible force, and the sound it made was as loud as 10 train tires exploding. How such a terrifying blow was blocked at this moment. Wasco looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Not only did his fist not shake the opponent, his fist could not even touch the opponent's body. "Mr. Wasco, don't overuse your holy power like this." Boss Luo shook his head. With a wave of his hand, a few more chains shot out, and faster than Wasco could react, they wrapped around his hands and feet respectively. Vasco couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Boss Luo said casually, "If he thinks that I'm deliberately making things difficult for him, then it's not good." Wasco felt his brain go blank at this moment, and the holy power that was continuously flowing out of his body seemed to have been cut off at this moment, and disappeared without a trace. On the other hand, without the holy power, the erosion of the fallen force field also stopped because of this. He could not resist at all. 10 minutes is very fast. Boss Luo released the chains at this time. Oh, it's now 9 minutes. Once the chains were released, Wasco was completely free, but at this moment, he did not dare to move. If he thinks that I'm deliberately making things difficult for him, then it's not good. If he thinks that I'm deliberately making things difficult for him, then it's not good. In his mind, only the words of this mysterious young man kept echoing. He. At this moment, Wasco only felt cold all over, as if he was hiding in the ice of the extreme north that would not melt for thousands of years. It was a fear and coldness that he would never forget in his life. He directly collapsed on the roof of the church, his face ashen. Below them, a pair of eyes hidden in the shadows who had witnessed all of this revealed a look of shock, the Clown Knight. At the moment when he was about to hide deeper, he saw the young man on the roof looking down at him, and suddenly his body stiffened. This guy was 10 times, no, 100 times more terrifying than Farlier. Chapter 1602. Run. This was the only command Dagonet's brain gave him at this moment. Even before the command reached his brain's comprehension area, his body had already reacted. A black shadow shot out from the darkness at a terrifying speed and reached the edge of the curtain of darkness of the fallen force field in an instant. There seemed to be a great terror following behind him, and the feeling of suffocation spread. That pair of eyes seemed to be expanding endlessly behind him. Finally, Dagonet broke through the curtain of darkness and arrived at the street outside the church. The curtain of darkness seemed to only react to people who had holy power. The street was silent at the moment, but it wasn't that there was no one. The ordinary people around had all fallen unconscious because of the appearance of the curtain of darkness. Dagonet gasped for air. After breaking through the curtain of darkness, the feeling of great terror subsided. He looked at his trembling hands in panic. The armor of the 12 knights on his body, which was made with the power of the elves and the crystallization of the divine power technology of the ancient Celtic divine kingdom, had collapsed and cracked at this moment. Dagonet immediately leaned against the wall of the house and sat on the ground weightlessly. He murmured to himself, "Only one look was enough to make the armor of inheritance collapse. This is not a power that should exist in this world. This is not God?" The phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated, and Dagonet's heart stopped for a moment. Then he reacted and quickly took it out, only to find that his hands were trembling so much that he couldn't keep them steady. He couldn't hold the phone properly several times, and almost dropped it to the ground. What's the matter?" It was the voice of Muffin, a knight from the night mechanism stationed here. "Lord Dagonet, the curtain of darkness has appeared again. Should we move out?" "Move out?" Dagonet stood up abruptly. "What move?" "Don't move. No, as far as you can, retreat as far as you can. I order you to evacuate this place immediately." After saying that, Dagonet ignored Muffin on the other side of the phone, who didn't know what to do, and immediately launched the fighter plane that had landed on the cliff by the sea. He needed to bring everything that had happened tonight back to the headquarters of the night mechanism. He couldn't stay a moment longer. In an instant, Dagonet disappeared from the street and rushed to the place where the fighter plane was hidden at the fastest speed in his life. Mr. Clown from the night organization had left. Boss Luo naturally knew about his departure. He was considering a problem. Judging from the value of the information about a sphere provided by Lamias, the fact that he restrained Wasco for 10 minutes was already the maximum tolerance he could show, from the perspective of the shop's trading principles. Of course, if he was willing to do it himself, it would be a different story. So, he only glanced at Dagonet and had no intention of making a move. Mr. Clown, on the other hand, was too sensitive. What a superhuman sense of touch! Boss Luo shook his head. The crux of the problem was whether or not he should charge Lamias an additional fee. Suddenly, Boss Luo paid attention to Wasco, the old man in front of him, who had trained himself to be extremely strong, had his muscles that were as hard as steel shrinking bit by bit. His eyes were empty and lifeless. It was as if he didn't notice the collapse of his body. For decades, Wasco had trained his body tirelessly. This was completely supported by the fanaticism in his heart for his faith, which allowed him to break through the limits of the human body and the brain time and time again. But now, when his faith was destroyed by a powerful force, his body couldn't withstand the fatigue and damage accumulated from the decades of horrifying training, and his body directly collapsed. The more devout you are, the more fragile you are. Faith and destruction are just a matter of thought. Boss Luo glanced at Wasco casually. This is probably where the disadvantage lies. Shaking his head, Boss Luo slightly opened the holy power seal on Wasco. This slight opening allowed the holy power in Wasco's body to appear again. Although it was weak, like a small spring, the amount of holy power that gushed out was nothing compared to his lake-like capacity. But it was the source of hope. He felt it, holy power, the power of faith. Wasco suddenly raised his head. The Lord didn't give up on him. The Lord didn't give up on him. The Lord didn't give up on him. The flame of hope was once again ignited in his eyes. The appearance of the weak holy power was like a tinder. His body stopped collapsing, and his shrunken muscles slowly recovered. Wasco stood up again. The Lord didn't give up on him, but his faith wasn't strong enough, which was why he was almost doomed with just a few words. It was his faith that wasn't strong enough. And it wasn't strong enough, which was why he couldn't defeat the demon. What should he do if he wasn't strong enough? Double the training. 10 times the training. Keep training until he was strong enough. Boss Luo nodded at this time, and in just a moment, Wasco's soul recovered to its original state. The method of faith had obvious disadvantages, but the benefits were also obvious. If an ordinary person's heart collapsed, it would take a long time for them to recover. But looking at Wasco's life, he was actually reaching the limit of his lifespan, wasn't he? Boss Luo couldn't help but wonder if Vasco would be a part of heaven's rent when it came time to pay. You look much better, Mr. Wasco. Boss Luo smiled slightly. Wasco had calmed down. He naturally understood that it was the other party who let him go, allowing him to regain his faith. Although he felt terrified, it wasn't to the extent of falling into the abyss like 10 seconds ago. He took a deep breath. Your target is Stella? Her target is. Boss Luo said noncommittally. Wasco frowned and said, Stella? Humph, if you have the ability to catch you, just don't regret it after you catch her. The faith in that guy's heart wouldn't collapse so easily. At this time, a few backup paladins rushed out, seeing Wasco on the roof. They all wanted to help, but Wasco knocked them out one by one, until the 4 backup paladins fainted. He glanced at Boss Luo, then sat directly on the roof. Since he couldn't do anything, he might as well meditate on this place. Train, force himself to train all the time, until the day he was strong enough. Seeing this, Luaccio smiled casually. His eyes swept around, then swept to the corner of the church's courtyard where the storeroom was located. He didn't stop, but the curtain in the storeroom swayed slightly. I wonder if Teacher Poulin will come, Boss Luo whispered. When Lamias broke the door and entered, Tom, who was squatting beside Father Stella and eating, suddenly ran away. "Can you push the door open next time? Do you know that it's very expensive to hire workers now?" Father Stella glared at her. Lamias looked around. Only Father Stella was left in the dining hall. "Father, sorry to disturb you again." Lamias directly spread the wings of her armor, slowly flying towards Father Stella. "I hope you can cooperate with me and leave with me." Father Stella said unhappily, "You can't even take one punch from me. Where did you get the confidence to take me away? It's true that people with big breasts have no brains. You can't beat me even if you think with your knees." "God-slaying equipment," Lamias suddenly said. "This is the name of the armor I'm wearing." "So low." Father Stella shook his head and said, "You Black Order's fallen nuns revealing clothes are still better. Speaking of which, if you want to send hundreds of fallen nuns to invite me, I would have gone back with you yesterday." Lamias said indifferently, "God-slaying equipment's material is a bit special. It can remember all attacks and then evolve until it can ignore the upper limit of the previous attack. Father, I don't know how much strength you used last time." 0.25. Father Stella stared and said disdainfully, "You want to remember, right? Then I'll add 0.01 next time. I'll make your armor remember until it starts to doubt its life." Lamias had a big headache. This Father Stella's character was really bad. The young manor owner promised her a limited time. She didn't want to continue arguing with Father Stella here, so she directly attacked. God-slaying armor had already remembered Father Stella's attack strength yesterday. After a night of adjustment and evolution, it was enough to deal with Father Stella's power today. Even if the opponent was holding back, she would definitely not be like yesterday, unable to fight back. "Don't overturn my table. Are you going to clean it later?" Seeing Lamias's punch coming, Father Stella snorted coldly. He didn't use his fist, but he used his palm to slap. An unbelievably majestic holy power flashed out, and Lamias seemed to see a palm bigger than a house pressing down in an instant. Smack! Her body was directly slapped onto the floor. Last time, Stella's fist strength penetrated the armor and directly broke her internal organs, but this time, it didn't hurt her body, but it directly broke the God-slaying armor. She looked absent-mindedly at the pieces of armor shattering. It shattered like glass fragments, as if it was wailing. Then, the fragments on the floor began to turn into a silver liquid and converged. After converging, it all gathered towards the back of Lamias's neck. Because of the special material, even so, the God-slaying armor could still be restored through self-repair. It was just that with such a degree of damage, it would probably take a long time to completely recover. "Still want to be a demon?" Father Stella snorted coldly at this time, stretched out his hand and grabbed, and actually dug out the armor core implanted in the back of Lamias's neck. The pain from the nerve rupture almost made Lamias faint. She looked at the silver bead with a trace of blood in Father Stella's hand at this moment in fear. On the roof, Wasco was already doubting life after being negotiated with by Boss Luo. Similarly, she was also doubting life under the means of Father Stella. At this time, Father Stella clenched his fist, and the blazing holy flame burned in the center of his palm. In just a moment, the silver bead was calcined into ashes. "With such a level of skill, you dare to attack the Holy Church?" At this time, Father Stella's eyes were spitting fire, and he looked as if he expected better from them. "Don't you know that there are at least 100 and dozens of people in the Holy Church who are stronger than me? With such a level of skill, how are you going to fight? Go back and drink milk quickly." 100 and dozens. Of course, Lamias didn't believe it. In the Holy Church, was there really someone who could be more terrifying than this monstrous and powerful priest in front of her? Unless it was a descending angel, and a high-level one at that. If everyone in the Holy Church has such a powerful priest. Lamias smiled bitterly. "You're right, we really don't have any chance of winning. I'm just a frog in a well." They couldn't win, and probably couldn't escape. Lamias could only be secretly anxious at this time, and at the same time, there was a glimmer of hope. She didn't know which manor owner would support her. But the hope was also slim. Who knew that Stella could be so powerful? Was this guy really human? At this time, the priest slowly sighed and stood up. How about this? With such a level of skill, you won't be able to catch up with the taillights of the Holy Church in the next few hundred years. So quickly invite me back to the Black Order, and elect me as the general president of your religious order, and wait for me to take you to the Holy Mountain. I have people inside the Holy Church, and with the cooperation from the inside and the outside, we can take the Holy Church away in one wave. At that time, you can replace it, and then conquer the world, and then worship me as the world's leader. You? What did you say? Lamias widened her eyes. Did these words really come out from the mouth of a priest? The report did have a special note on the part where Father Stella spoke without thinking, but this priest in front of her, what he said was beyond the level of speaking without thinking, right? I said, quickly invite me back to be your general president, and then wait for me to lead you to conquer the world. Father Stella lowered his head at this time, and said impatiently, What's wrong with you, little girl? Your ears are not working well at such a young age? I already said, you young people shouldn't be too indulgent. Look at your peach blossom eyes and vulgar body. I don't know how many men have exploited you, or how many virgins have you exploited, really. From today onwards, you will follow me, Jessie. Crazy. At this time, Lamias suddenly quivered. The Father Stella in front of her was actually crazy. The pair of eyes that stared at her were actually so chaotic, without focus. Only endless madness was left. ############################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################### seconds. Chapter 1603. On the roof, Wasco quickly opened his eyes. Of course, he could not cultivate anything in such a short time. He probably just sat for a while to replenish his strength. He was not so bold as to meditate and cultivate in front of the enemy without looking for anything. If it was any other enemy, the mysterious young man was different. His intuition told him that as long as he did not take the initiative to attack, the other party would be happy to maintain the peace at this moment. Furthermore, and judging from the other party's attitude, it seemed that he would not be involved in this matter after 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Wasco had absolute confidence in Stella. If Stella was so easily captured by the Black Order, then the name Iron Fist Stella would not be engraved in the prison code of the Godly Might Prison. It was a name that many dark creatures in the Godly Might Prison feared. "You don't seem worried about that woman at all." Wasco frowned and said, "Are you so sure that she can succeed?" Although he had absolute confidence in Stella, the mysterious man in front of him was beyond his understanding. Vaguely, he was actually more uneasy. But Boss Luo just smiled and did not answer Wasco's question. He only cared about holding Wasco back for 10 minutes, regardless of whether Lamia succeeded or failed in the end. The content of this agreement could not be mentioned casually. This was the most basic way of dealing. Seeing this, Wasco knew that he could not get any answers from the other party. He slowly exhaled a turbid breath, and his holy power recovered bit by bit through meditation. Perhaps it was an illusion. Wasco always felt that after his holy power was sealed and reappeared, it seemed to be purer than before. Even in the face of the depraved energy field, its resistance had increased a lot. He seemed to have gained an unexpected benefit in these few minutes. It made Wasco suddenly feel ridiculous. Regardless, it was a good thing that his faith had become firmer after this tempering. His saint power had been enhanced, and that was a good thing. After all, when one's power had reached his level, it would be very difficult for him to improve. But even if he felt that his strength had improved this time, Wasco still had a feeling that the moment he swung his fist at this mysterious man again, his faith would be lost again. If only this mysterious man would not descend upon the holy city. This would be the most terrifying enemy of the Holy Church in the world. Less than 3 minutes left. He silently calculated the time in his heart. The mysterious woman from the Black Order had not returned yet, which meant that Stella was still standing strong at this time. The problem was, it had already been 6 or 7 minutes, but why was there no movement in the church below? Even the sounds of fighting seemed to have passed by in a flash or two. So? Have you made up your mind? My time is very expensive. Every minute is worth hundreds of thousands. In the dining hall, Father Stella stood with his hands behind his back. He was only wearing slippers under his black priest robe. Naturally, he did not have any aura. Lamia's had already gotten up. Father Stella did not attack her. He was just talking about how to conquer the world after he became the leader of the Black Order. First, he would sneak into the Holy City and find a dark and windy time to quietly kill the Pope. Then, he would let someone pretend to be the Pope. Then, he would use the same method to kill the rest of the cardinals and replace them. He would replace the people from the Black Order bit by bit in the Holy Church. Then, he would take advantage of the annual Mass in the Holy City. When the leaders of various countries came to attend the ceremony, he would kill those leaders and replace them. Power has not improved at all after so many years. Its life and death are in the hands of those people. It's so damn easy to take it. Was it really that easy? If it was really that easy, would the inhuman have already ruled the world long ago? But in the face of Lamia's doubts, Father Stella snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "That's why I say that you people are getting worse and worse. What is an inhuman? What is an extraordinary? An extraordinary person is called an inhuman. He has the ability to transcend the mortal world and ignore all the laws of the world. His power is above the rules. That is an extraordinary. You Black Order have mastered a lot of technology. There are also 1 or 2 half-baked guys who are hiding in the dark to plot. Get high, overthrow a regime, then establish a regime. Then, don't worry about anything else. First, start a worldwide inhuman war. Do you know what a revolution is? This is a revolution. Every day, every month, every year, you think about how to overthrow the suppression of the Holy Church. You don't know that the Holy Church has millions of believers, but what do you have? You bunch of rats only know how to play tricks in the dark. Look at the believers of the Church. Each of them can drown you with a mouthful of saliva. Ignorant. Ignorant. You have power but don't know how to cause trouble. Trash. A bunch of losers. Facing Father Stella, who was now crazily dissing the Black Order, Lamia's even had an illusion. What kind of Holy Church's former warden of Godly Might prison? This guy was probably the real ancestor of the Black Order. Now that he couldn't keep the lid on his coffin, he jumped out to criticize his descendants. "Father, are you really going to go back with me to the Black Order?" Lamia's frowned and asked. Was this priest really crazy, or was he faking it? The headquarters of the Black Order had always been a secret. The Holy Church had never given up on searching for the headquarters of the Black Order all these years. If Father Stella wanted to inquire about the headquarters of the Black Order at this time, the possibility of him risking his life was very high. What? Do you think I'm lying to you? Father Stella pointed to the cross hanging around his neck at this time. See, as everyone knows, I'm a priest who comes out to roam the world. Father, do you know that we don't lie? Even if we lie, it's a white and beautiful lie. Time was running out. Lamia's was also silently calculating the time in her heart. The manor owner only promised to delay Wasco for 10 minutes. Wasco had not appeared until now. It was obvious that he was completely suppressed. She had a new guess about the strength of the manor owner. But once the time passed and Wasco came back, the situation would be the worst for her. The Godslayer armor had been directly confiscated and destroyed by Father Stella. With just her human body, she might not even be able to withstand a punch from Wasco. She had to make a decision as soon as possible. Lamia's gritted her teeth, took a deep breath and said, Father, if you really want to join the Black Order, then fine, I'll be your guide. I'll tell your request to the inner circle of the Black Order, and then wait for the decision of the headquarters of the Black Order. That's right. You've wasted my saliva. At this time, Father Stella said unhappily, remember to tell the people of the Black Order, without hundreds of sexy nuns inviting me, don't even think about letting me leave this place. And your armor was destroyed by me, I've seen your face. You can't escape. Lamia's was shocked. Father Stella had given her too much of a shock, so much so that she had forgotten that after the armor was destroyed, her true appearance was exposed. Once I have news, I'll come again, Father. Lamia stared at Stella closely, and stepped back step by step. Father Stella did not chase after her, nor did he have any intention of stopping her. Once out of the door, Lamia's used all her strength to quickly retreat. Time's up. On the roof, Boss Luo suddenly said this. Wasco was relieved. He actually saw a figure escaping from the church. Looking at the back, it was obviously the mysterious woman of the Black Order. But the time was not up yet. Wasco wanted to chase after her, but he did not dare to move, and could only watch her escape. The veil of darkness also disappeared at this time. Sorry to disturb you. After saying that, Boss Luo took a step back, and his figure faded in front of Wasco's eyes and disappeared. Wasco sighed. He boasted that he had unparalleled strength in the world, and had always been able to easily suppress all dark creatures, but today he really suffered a big setback. I wonder how Stella's situation is. Thinking of this, Wasco did not care about the few paladin candidates he knocked out, and hurriedly walked into the church. Along the way, he found Father Stella, who was completely fine. The cafeteria was a bit messy. It seemed that there was a simple fight. There was a human-shaped pit on the ground, but other than that, the situation was much better than Wasco imagined. Why did you let the people of the religious order go? Wasco frowned. What if I didn't let them go? Father Stella picked his nose and said, I'm old enough to be their grandfather. Do you still want them to stay and have a twilight romance with me? What do you think this place is? Was it a forbidden sanctuary? This is the church, a sacred place. Resisting the urge to kill this guy, Wasco said in a deep voice, I'm serious. Father Stella also said seriously, I'm serious too. My pure young child art is about to be perfected. I can't get close to women at this time. Wasco sat down and pinched his forehead, and poured himself a glass of water. I was held back by a very scary guy, and almost couldn't come back. He wanted to talk about the mysterious young man in detail, but unexpectedly Stella said directly, I know. You know? Wasco could not help but be surprised and frowned. You know the origin of this mysterious young man? No, I don't know. Father Stella shook his head. If you don't know, then why are you talking about it? Wasco slammed his hand on the table. They were old friends for decades, and the number of times they flipped each other's tables could not be counted with fingers and toes. I don't know. Father Stella shrugged and said, but I only need to know one thing. Wasco asked subconsciously, what is it? Father Stella pointed at himself and said slowly, that is me, you, and the whole holy church are not enough to play with one of his fingers. Do you think it's enough? What? Wasco suddenly lost his mind, pressed his hands on the table, and stood up. He lost his composure. What do you know? Father Stella suddenly said, Wasco, for the sake of old friends for decades, I advise you to quickly surrender to the enemy. Staying in the holy church has no future. You can't believe in anyone, but to believe in him. Even if you believe in me, it's fine. Enough, Stella. Even if you're joking, you should have a sense of propriety. You're out of line. This time Wasco was really angry. Father Stella glanced at him silently, and then shrunk his head back. Forget I said anything. No, I know you're hiding a lot of things. Wasco took a deep breath and said, otherwise, you wouldn't have left the Godly Might prison without saying a word. You have to make it clear today, My patience has been worn out by you for decades, and it has long been exhausted. Do you really want me to say it? Father Stella suddenly asked. Wasco stared at him. Father Stella sighed. In fact, it's that old Pope who is jealous of me. When we were young, we grew up together and liked the same girl. That girl finally chose me, and the Pope has always held a grudge against me. When Amun defected, he bribed me and I let him go. As a result, the Pope knew about this. Now, he will definitely deal with me. How can I stay in the godly might prison any longer? Of course, I have to run away. Wasco was stunned and said subconsciously, Nonsense. You and I are from the same village. When did you become the Pope? Stella! You old bastard! Father Stella had disappeared without a trace. Church roof. Looking at the several paladin candidates who were still lying on the roof to dry, Father Stella shook his head. He walked to the front of the candidates and sighed. It's true, Wasco doesn't know how to clean up the trash. As he spoke, Priest Stryla kicked the young paladin candidates down one by one. My cross is crooked again. The priest walked angrily to the cross standing on the roof and straightened it. At this time, the sky had completely darkened. There were not many lights in the town, but they could always illuminate the darkness. Father Stella yawned. When he turned around, he saw a figure standing in front of him. The cool breeze blew, and the white shirt rolled up again and again. Teacher Poulin. I think I'm late. It seems that the matter here is over? Teacher Poulin looked around, and he was still carrying a bag of soil in his hand. At this time, he said apologetically, I went a little further. Father Stella said indifferently, It's not a big problem to be late, as long as you're not absent. Teacher Poulin smiled and said, I can't guess your riddle. Are you really crazy or pretending to be crazy? Father Stella said, Of course I'm normal. Chapter 1604. Just a glance? Do you think everyone is a pervert like Farrell? A pervert? Do you think I'm joking? No. Although you've always liked to joke, you can't afford to joke about this. The conversation between the clown knight Dagonet and the current head of the knight organization, Mr. Gareth, took place in the cockpit of the fighter plane. The Holy Church, the Black Order, mysterious strong men. Gareth looked at the report in his hand and frowned. What's so special about this town that these guys are attracted to? I don't care. I know I'll die here, so I'm not going to stay. Dagonet shook his head. Gareth was a little dissatisfied, but he didn't say anything. The knight organization seemed to have been reorganized, but the power was in the hands of the Queen. Even Gareth himself had pledged allegiance to the Queen in the Battle of Fog City. Even so, there were still different voices in the knight organization. Gareth belonged to the neutral faction, while Dagonet was the Queen's adopted son. Needless to say, he belonged to the royalist faction. Although the two had a superior and subordinate relationship in name, Dagonet was obviously a device in the knight organization to clamp down on Gareth. At the same time, Dagonet was also the head of the new Dragon Rider Armored Division. The former Prime Minister's legacy was renamed the Warrior Group. When Gareth mobilized him, he was also quite powerless. Since when did the knight organization have to give in even in its own country? Gareth shook his head and sighed with a bitter smile. After the Battle of Fog City, the knight organization was said to have been reorganized and reborn. However, after the reorganization, its strength was not as strong as before. It had been given too little time. More importantly, the knight organization had lost the Holy Grail, the spoils of war from 100 years ago. It was the key to intimidating the other inhuman of forces. It was comparable to nuclear weapons between big countries. This was actually a mess. When it was handed over to Gareth, it made him feel like he was leading a group of orphans in an orphanage to participate in an adult's war. Fortunately, the land of Britain was surrounded by the sea and was relatively independent. This is not giving in. It's just a tactical retreat, Dagonet said casually. You have to understand that if you stay, It's very likely that the night organization will lose one of the 12 knights. You weren't there, you didn't experience it, so you can't imagine how terrifying it was. A few hours ago, if you were in the same position as me, you might have been the one running away. Was it scary? Gareth was silent. He had personally stood in front of Farrell, the evilest man in the world, and had witnessed his absolute power. He had also felt the horror of Sir Hopkins, who held the Holy Grail, at the end of the great battle of the Fog City. Say no more. Gareth waved his hand. Since you've decided to retreat, I'll respect your decision. However, we, the Knight Organization, will never give up on any of our citizens. There's also a top-notch institution there, a place that sends talents to Britain. You have to understand that there are quite a few knights in the Knights Organization who have also studied in this university, and they have quite a lot of feelings for it. Let them come. I grew up in an orphanage anyway. I don't know what my alma mater is. Gareth could only frown and say, Dagonet, I hope you can make another decision, which is to wait for support. I will try my best to send people to support you. Of the 12 knights, I will try my best to send you 2. When we went to intercept Farrell's escape from prison, there were also 3 of us. Was it effective? Dagonet sneered. Gareth, you're still so naive. As long as we can't reach the 3rd stage of the Armor of Heritage, we're just ordinary Grand Knights with the title of 12 Knights in vain. I'll report this matter to Her Majesty the Queen and let her decide. Gareth took a deep breath and looked deeply at Dagonet. He believed that Dagonet had already contacted the Queen before communicating with him. The point was that Dagonet's words implied that he intended to give up the whole town. Then, was this plan of Dagonet's private, or was it secretly instructed by Her Majesty the Queen? Lancelot? I want to report something to Her Majesty the Queen. On the screen was Lancelot's unsmiling face. Her Majesty the Queen has already gone to bed. Lancelot shook her head and said, She ordered that no matter who it is, she doesn't plan to see you tonight. Perhaps you can wait until tomorrow morning. Lancelot? Gareth frowned. Lancelot said apologetically, It seems to include anything related to the knight's mechanism. Gareth's frown deepened. Lancelot, do you know something? Lancelot pondered for a moment and said, About evening. 5 hours ago, Her Majesty the Queen received a special call. Who was it? A call from the Pope of the Holy Church. Lancelot lowered her voice. That's all I know, Gareth. I hope you'll pay attention to your identity. The current knight's mechanism is not the same as it was when Sir Hopkins was in power. Good night. Lancelot, looking at the disconnected communication, Gareth sighed heavily. He felt rather powerless. He leaned against the back of the chair and said to himself, I'm really not suited to be this kind of leader. He liked to be free. He liked to be an unreliable teacher. He liked to lead his students to slay demons all over the country. He didn't like to sit in this visible room and sign documents. Lancelot walked into the Queen's bedroom with a glass of water. The Queen did plan to go to bed, and had already changed into her pajamas. However, she was not in bed at this time. Instead, she was in front of the balcony, painting. It's a call from Gareth, right? Her Majesty the Queen asked indifferently as she adjusted the color palette. He seems to be in a hurry. Lancelot gently put the glass on the table, then put away the tray and stood aside silently to wait. There will be a result tomorrow. Her Majesty the Queen stopped. Whether it's good or bad, time will pass quickly, as fast as the little time I have left. Among the humans, Her Majesty the Queen was quite old. And she was indeed just an ordinary human. Did something happen? Lancelot couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Her Majesty the Queen looked at Lancelot at this time and smiled. You know, as long as there are benefits to be gained as a queen, I will do it, even if it is accompanied by sacrifice. Your Majesty? This is what my teacher taught me. Her Majesty the Queen smiled and said, It's quite cruel and quite ruthless. I spent my whole life to learn what is called the ruthlessness of a king. No, you are a merciful king. Lancelot looked up and said, I'm not merciful. It's just that kindness can be turned into something good for me, that's all. Her Majesty the Queen said with a faint smile, You see, I'm a bad mother who will imprison her own son. This time I really have to sleep. Her Majesty the Queen slowly stood up. My safety will continue to depend on you, Lancelot. She slowly walked toward the big bed as if talking to herself. The weak can only bow their heads and wait. Wait for the day when they are strong enough, then take revenge. Lamia later came to the seaside. This was the place where she and Boss Luo agreed to meet, regardless of whether this operation was successful or not. Father Stella's strength had exceeded her expectations. Perhaps it had also exceeded the expectations of the entire Black Order. The god-slaying armor was one of the secret weapons that the Black Order had spent a lot of manpower and resources to develop over the past few decades to deal with the Holy Church. However, it was easily destroyed by Father Stella with one punch, and was even destroyed in the end. The entire Black Order had only successfully developed 3 models of the god-slaying armor so far. Lamia's did not even dare to imagine if the Black Order knew about this matter. If she was sent to serve the guest from outer space, would there still be any leeway? Lamia's was no longer as valiant as before. She was sitting by the seaside hugging her knees and looking into the distance, gradually lost in thought. She suddenly heard footsteps. Is there something on your mind? I'm a little tired. I just want to rest for a while. Lamia's quickly stood up. Under the heavy pressure, when she saw the mysterious man again, she seemed to be in a better mood magically. Thank you for your hard work tonight. You successfully stalled Wasco. It's a pity that I didn't achieve my own expectations. Boss Luo looked at the few fishing boats that were anchored not far away and suddenly said, Those people will go out to sea to fish tomorrow. They all hope to have a good harvest, but as for how much they'll get, we'll only know when they return tomorrow. Lamia said, Which faction do you belong to? How can you know so much about the internal affairs of the Black Order? Who are you? How can you directly use the power of the sphere? How can you suppress a veteran holy knight of the church? I don't belong to any faction, Boss Luo said while enjoying the sea breeze. The reason why I can use the power of the sphere is theoretically a kind of cheating behavior. As for the matter of stalling Wasco, isn't it because Miss Lamia's hopes that I can do it? That's why you asked me. If I say that I hope that you can help me solve all my problems, is that okay? Lamia said suddenly. She suddenly remembered the conversation between herself and Eve earlier, and her ears immediately became hot. I've done what I promised you, Boss Luo said directly. The agreement has been completed. I won't disturb you for the rest of the time. Seeing that Boss Luo was about to leave, Lamia's hurriedly said, What do I need for you to help me? When I feel that it's worth it. He left such an answer and then disappeared. Lamia stood blankly by the cold seaside, suddenly hugging her hands tightly. But what did she have that was worth Boss Luo's expectation, and why would he help her? Even if I can suppress Wasco, I'm afraid that I can't do anything when faced with the unreasonable strength of Stella, she whispered to herself. She always felt that such thoughts were just an excuse. At this moment, the special mobile phone used for communication suddenly rang, and Lamia's body trembled slightly. After hesitating for a moment, she took a deep breath, stabilized her emotions, and directly answered the call. It's me, she said in a low voice. Lamia's. On the other side of the phone, there was a low and hoarse voice. According to Katerina's orders, the battle nuns have arrived. Where are you? So fast? Lamia said subconsciously. The battle nuns were the strongest combat force under Katerina's command, and they had always been stationed at the headquarters of the religious order. However, she had only communicated with Katerina half a day ago. Katerina has allowed us to use the Nautilus, the voice said quickly. So, report your current location, Sister Lamias. The seaside. I'm at the seaside. She took a deep breath and had no choice but to send out her coordinate. The Nautilus, one of the mysterious weapons hidden by the Black Order. It was also the reason why the Black Order had been able to successfully reach their destination in all their secret operations over the years without being detected by many eyes. They even used the Nautilus. Lamias could not help but mutter to herself, "It seems that Katerina's situation in the religious order is really—" Not long after, Lamias arrived in front of a cliff. She saw a glimmer of light in the black seawater in front of her, following the direction of the waves and rapidly approaching her. Not long after, the seawater churned, and a huge object emerged from the deep sea. However, it was obvious that it was not completely close. It was likely that the seawater was not deep enough to support its movement. At this moment, 7 streams of light appeared on the floating platform of this huge object, and then shot in front of Lamias. The woman in the lead had a strong physique comparable to Wasco. Not only that, she carried a huge black sword on her back, and there were many crisscrossing scars on her face. The group of combat nuns were all wearing black armor. This was a special mass-produced model developed with the Godslayer armor as the prototype, the reverse cross of Fear battle armor. Lady Grant. Lamias took a deep breath and walked forward. The strong woman in front of her with countless scars on her face was the leader of the entire group of combat nuns. Before Lamias became the user of the Godslayer armor, she was actually a member of this group of combat nuns and had received Grant's training. Perhaps it was due to her unpleasant experience in the past, but when facing Grant, Lamias always felt a chill run down her spine. Lamias, the expressionless Grant said slowly at this time, according to Katerina's instructions, we will arrest you and bring you back to headquarters. The reason is betrayal. What? Lamias was stunned. At this time, the combat nuns had already surrounded her. Chapter 1605. The sharp blades that were pulled out from the back of the reverse cross of Fear were pointed at Lamias's throat. There were a total of 6 of such sharp blades, and each of them came from the 6 combat nuns. Excluding the individual innate differences, these 6 combat nuns had undergone the same training as her. Lamias found it hard to accept for a moment. Betrayal? Lady Grant, is this really Lady Katerina's order? Lamias frowned. She could not be afraid because fear would only cause her to waver. She needed more information to be able to determine her true situation. Grant, who was 2 heads taller than Lamias, said coldly, "First, if you give up resisting, we will capture you directly. Second, if you don't give up resisting, we will cripple you and then capture you." Lamias had no choice but to meet Grant's gaze. It had been more than 10 years. She had been trained under Grant for more than 10 years. Lamias was very clear about the character of this woman who had a stronger body than men. It seems that this isn't a joke of reunion after a long separation. Lady Grant. Lamias slowly exhaled and then said indifferently, "However, Lady Grant, have you forgotten one thing? The Godslayer armor is still with me. Do you really think that you can capture me with these secondary or reverse cross of Fear that were developed using the Godslayer armor as a sample?" As she spoke, she could clearly feel that the combat nuns surrounding her were slightly shaken. "It just so happens that I also want to see the power of the Godslayer armor, one of the greatest masterpieces of the Order." At this time, Nun Grant took out her huge sword and inserted it directly into the ground. "Don't do anything, just set up a blockade nearby. It's been 3 years, Lamias, let me see how much progress you've made after graduation." Lamias's heart twitched. If the Godslayer armor was still with her, but now even one of the 6 combat nuns could easily defeat her, let alone the fully armed Grant. "I request to communicate with Katerina." Lamias snorted coldly. Don't look at how calm she was right now. In fact, she was already panicking to the extreme in her heart. Fighting against Grant now was no different from fighting bare-handed against soldiers in armored vehicles. Only a fool would be willing to do that. She could only gamble that the other party still didn't know that the god-slaying armor had been destroyed, and that they still had some misgivings in their hearts. She didn't believe that Katerina would give such an order. Perhaps there was only one possibility, and that was that the entire order of battle nuns had betrayed them. The new faction in the order had grown to a terrifying degree, and Katerina didn't even know the situation she was in. Grant frowned. She could see that Lamias didn't have the slightest intention to make a move. She pondered for a moment. It wasn't because she was glad that she didn't have to make a move, or rather, she hoped that Lamias would really make a move. If you want to see him, then I'll let you see him. Grant suddenly waved his hand. One of the battle nuns immediately took out a communication device and turned it on in front of Lamias. It only took a moment for the connection to be connected. At that time, when she saw Katerina again after half a day, Lamias had a feeling that this order might really have been given by Katerina herself. Why? Lamias looked at Katerina with some disbelief. A lot of things have happened, just half a day has passed. Katerina was silent for a moment before she sighed and said, "Our last spy in the Holy Church sent the last message to headquarters not long after you sent the message." The last message. Lamias even thought that the last spy might have already. What message? Descending angels. Katerina said in a deep voice, "The Holy Church has once again welcomed descending angels, and this time, there are a total of 5 descending angels." What? Lamias was instantly shocked. She had never truly seen a descending angel, but there had been several disasters in the history of the Black Order that had almost been wiped out, and each of those disasters had been because of the appearance of a descending angel. 1. Katerina took a deep breath and said, "As long as one descending angel makes a move, it will be enough to destroy us. This news is absolutely true, so we can't just sit around and wait for our death." Even if that's the case, Lamias couldn't help but rush forward, but she was quickly stopped by the battle nuns beside her, who motioned for her not to move. Katerina said, "Facing a descending angel, we can only rely on Pride's human body refinement technology. We can only satisfy all of his requests. I'm sorry, Lamias." "Katerina, I've said it before, we don't necessarily have to rely on Pride's power. That's too far away, and its origins are unknown. If we have enough time, perhaps we can." Katerina shook her head. "You may not know this, but just now, a total of 17 of our hidden branches in Eurasia were destroyed. In less than an hour, 5 descending angels swept through 1/3 of Eurasia, and eliminated nearly 20% of our manpower. Do you know what this means, Lamias?" Katerina sighed as she looked at Lamias, who was completely stunned in front of the screen, and said in a bitter voice, "This means that perhaps in less than a day, 5 descending angels will be able to completely wipe out the Black Order." Lamias clenched her fists tightly. Her face was pale, but she still wanted to resist. Even if that's the case, can you guarantee that Pride will really be able to do it? No, if he can do it, why would he drag it out until now? He might not be able to do it. I'm afraid that you, and those people in the new faction, are all very clear about this. But you'd rather deceive yourselves into believing, compromise, and humbly curry favor with that fat pig than face the fear in your hearts. You're afraid that 100 years of hard work will be nothing more than an illusion. You're all useless." Katerina sighed and said, "Pride seems to be able to increase his power through copulation with women. Currently, the new faction already has a nameless saintess candidate, so naturally, they'll be offering. Lamias, putting you at the end of the offering list is already the limit of what I can do. I hope that Pride will have increased his power enough before it's your turn. Otherwise, in short, during this time, you must return to the headquarters and be on standby." What exactly did Katerina say? Lamias realized that the more Katerina spoke, the more she couldn't hear clearly, to the point where she couldn't even hear the voices around her. She didn't know when the communication had been cut off. Seeing Lamia's lowering her head in silence, Grant waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "Arrest her." "Sorry to offend, Sister Lamia's." The 6 combat nuns clenched their teeth and were about to make a move. Lamia's lowered her head and didn't say a word, but suddenly reached out and grabbed the hidden pendant on her body. At this moment, something strange happened. She felt something rubbing against her feet. Lamia subconsciously looked down and discovered that the thing rubbing against her feet was actually a fat gold cat. Lamia's was startled. All the combat nuns, including Grant, were startled at this moment. "I said that I wanted 100 or so sexy nuns to come and pick me up. But what kind of things are coming this time? Only a few people are so shabby. Also, where did this Wasco-sized big guy come from? Is this the only sincerity you Black Order have?" At the same time, a rather annoying old man's voice came with the wind. "Father Stella." Lamia's hand holding the reverse relic suddenly loosened. She saw a figure coming from afar. In just a few steps, he had already arrived in front of everyone. Father Stella. It was just that he wasn't wearing his black priest robe. The priest was wearing checkered pajamas and an ice cream cone nightcap at this time. Father Stella? Lamia's couldn't believe that Father Stella would appear in front of her. He is Iron Fist Invincible Stella? Sister Grant frowned at this time. But in the face of Father Stella, who came quietly, several combat nuns were shocked at the same time. Sister Grant frowned. Father Stella's last poisonous tongue had obviously annoyed her. "Don't call me." Father Stella snorted at this time. "I came here with sincerity, but I didn't expect you to greet me with these inferior products. I'm really disappointed. If you want me to join you in your next life." She didn't care about Father Stella's madness at this time. As if she saw a life-saving straw, she quickly said, "Father, these people are here to take you back. Be careful. It's not that I don't want to, but there are people in the Order who don't want you to join. They intend to deny your plan to conquer the world." "Catch me?" Father Stella glanced at the combat nuns suspiciously, and finally his eyes fell on Sister Grant. He suddenly realized and said, "I say, no wonder you came with this thing. Humph. The plan to conquer the world is a perfect plan that I spent a full half an hour to come up with. How dare you deny it? It's simply disrespectful to the Lord. You deserve to be beaten. Take my iron fist of the Lord." Lamia's didn't want to complain about the name. But no matter what the name was, as long as this punch had half the power when it broke the God-slaying armor, Lamia's had the urge to rush forward and hug this old man. Father Stella opened his legs at this time, lowered his waist, and punched out softly. He even shouted, "Ha!" Then there was no then. Not to mention the fist wind, even a breeze didn't appear. This was the former warden of Godly Might Prison, the invincible Iron Fist Stella, who was known to suppress all the dark creatures in Euroland with one punch. At this time, Sister Grant, who was facing the fist, was silent for a few seconds, then she waved her hand and said, "Catch this crazy old man too." "Yes." The combat nuns didn't say anything and were full of momentum. Lamia's heart was dead at this time. Boom! A loud sound came. Sister Grant suddenly turned around and saw that on the sea in front of her, where the Nautilus stopped, a water column rose into the sky at this time. The Nautilus, one of the precious mysterious weapons of the Black Order, was broken at the waist at this moment. The water column rose into the sky and then dispersed, turning into a drizzle and sprinkling with the wind. When the raindrops hit Sister Grant's face, she was able to make her shiver. She turned around and saw that the 6 combat nuns had fallen to the ground, motionless. Their reverse cross of fear armor had even shattered. At this time, Father Stella, who was called a silly old man by her, was picking his nose, looking up, and said, "Who are you calling crazy? Come here, I promise I won't break your chest muscles with one punch." Sister Grant sucked in a breath of cold air. Almost without any thought, she instinctively jumped to the cliff behind her. The armor on the back of the reverse cross of fear shot out blue light at the same time, pushing her body into the air. Want to leave? No way. Father Stella picked up a stone directly. Eat my bullet of love and justice. It was just a throw. Lamias clearly saw Sister Grant fall directly from the sky at this time, and finally fell directly into the sea. Tsk, you missed. Father Stella looked from the cliff at this time. On the sea, the broken Nautilus slowly sank, and the sea was still turbulent. Lamias's mood fluctuated, and she knelt on the ground at once. She looked at Father Stella's back and saw the starlight scattered, and there seemed to be a layer of faint light on the priest's body. Why are you looking at me? Father Stella frowned at this time. I sacrificed my sleep time to come here. I thought you were sincere in inviting me to be your boss, but I didn't expect you to be not sincere at all. I've changed my mind. After 3, 5, or 7 years, I'll find some time to destroy your lair. Are you afraid? Lamias suddenly laughed out loud. Father Stella said in surprise, Tsk, are you scared out of your mind? You can still laugh? Please, take me with you when the time comes. Lamias took a deep breath, took out the reverse holy relic on her body, put it in the palm of her hand, and then crawled in front of Father Stella. From today onwards, you are my faith. What's the situation? Father Stella suddenly widened his eyes. Father, maybe you don't have to wait so long. I'll take you to the headquarters of the order now. Lamias stood up directly, and her eyes were full of fanaticism. You will become the master of the new era. It's over, it's over. This girl's brain is really scared. Father Stella suddenly shuddered at this time. I can't afford to offend, I can't afford to offend. Let's go. So, the Iron Fist priest slipped away, and very quickly. It doesn't matter if you are really crazy or not. Lamias took a deep breath and said to herself, it's better than giving up my order. She suddenly looked at the several combat orders who had fainted on the ground, thought for a while, then walked forward and stripped the reverse cross of fear armor from these nuns. Finally, I have some power to protect myself. Lamias looked at the submarine Nautilus that had completely sunk into the sea, but suddenly felt homeless. Hashtag 3PS1. 780 seconds, PS2. Happy birthday to Under the Parasol Tree. Chapter 1606. A while ago. The Holy Church, the Holy City. Dawn was about to arrive in this place where a city was a country. 5 descending angels were praying in the eastern palace where dawn was about to rise. The Pope was waiting outside the door, not daring to overstep his authority. Recently, some problems had occurred within the Holy Church, and the Church was in a precarious situation. But now, everything was fine, and the appearance of the descending angel made all the petty thieves stop their actions. The Pope had also regained his vigor and health. In a single night, the black religious congregation's strongholds on the European continent had been cleared out. This was an unprecedented victory in recent years. The Pope was in a good mood. This was the Lord's will. He felt that his faith had received an unprecedented response. However, the arrival of these 5 descending angels seemed to have other secret. Four-winged. There were not many four-winged angels who had descended in the history of the Holy Church. Every time it was because of important matters, but this time the angels did not reveal anything. In the room, 5 handsome men and women had just finished praying and stood up. Angels did not have a gender, but as the carrier of descent, they obviously had one. But there was no other way. Only seraphs could ignore the will of the world and descend directly. For them, it was safer to descend into the body of a human, and the world would not reject them so much. There are too many different voices in this subworld. One of the descending angels said with dissatisfaction, the development of the Holy Church is unsatisfactory. Among the many subworlds occupied by heaven, this one can only be regarded as below average. Angels should not have emotions. This might be caused by the thoughts of the carrier itself. The four-winged angel's face was dignified. He glanced at the descending angel who had just spoken. This is a subworld with a single-digit number. Remember, every subworld with a single-digit number is quite dangerous. So even if a seraph descends, there is also the danger of falling. It is not easy for the glory of our Lord to take root and sprout here. We helped the Pope clean up some Black Order forces. I hope he can develop more in the future. The third descending angel said indifferently, "This is just a casual thing. It is not the mission of our descent this time." Fortunately, Lord Raphael mentioned before that the fallen star of dawn is here. It's already been suppressed by Lord Raphael. It's only slightly stronger than an ordinary person now. There's nothing to worry about. Our goal is to search for mutated individuals in this world. That's the most important thing. We have to find Metatron. Is Metatron really in this subworld? I'm not sure, but this is the information that Lord Moses obtained from the Book of Revelation. He wants us to try our best to explore the subworlds that are closer to the front. Therefore, the subworlds from number 10 onwards are the most likely to be the subworld. Moreover, even the Star of Dawn has fallen into this number 003, but if we search like this, it's too slow. An angel suddenly frowned and said, "It's a pity that the Holy Church's influence in this subworld is not very satisfactory. If it was in a subworld where the Holy Church had absolute influence, it would be too easy to find someone." The angel was telling the truth. Among the many subworlds, there was a world completely occupied by heaven. Regardless of which stage the civilization of the world had developed to, divine authority was supreme and above all so-called laws. In that seed world, a single oracle was all that was needed for the entire world to move. If that's the case, let's make the Holy Church here have enough power. The four-winged angel smiled. Isn't that too risky? Number 003, apart from us, there seems to be a large number of mythological legacies. This is a land of mythological chaos. However, the four-winged angel said, "We have followed Lord Michael to conquer many worlds and explored countless desolate lands of faith. We have even encountered many worlds with worse conditions than this. Heaven was only attacked by a group of rascals once. Is this enough to shake the faith in your heart? A transcendence organization. One day, the wrath of the divine war will burn in their territory." Since the four-winged angel had said so, the other four angels could only obey. After all, this four-winged angel was a vanguard who had followed Lord Michael to conquer countless subworlds. This was an angel of authority among the three middle-level angels. Lord Gamaliel, apart from his divine position, he was a powerful angel that was comparable to an upper-level seraph in terms of pure combat power. That was why he could enter this extremely dangerous subworld number 003. "Let the Pope, who is waiting outside, come in," the four-winged angel Gamaliel said calmly. Thus, the Pope, who had been waiting outside, entered the room in fear and trepidation. "Greetings, angels. Now, how many holy relics are there in the Holy Church?" Gamaliel asked as soon as he saw the Pope enter. The Pope thought for a moment and said, "There are 7 holy relics in the Holy City. 5 of them have been used in the Angel's Ascension ceremony. Currently, there are only 2 holy relics that can be used." "Too few." Gamaliel frowned. "After every angel leaves, they will pass away and leave behind a holy relic. There shouldn't be so few here." The Pope thought for a bit and said, "There are still a few holy relics that have been lost to the outside world. Some of them require special geographical conditions in order to maximize their effects, so they were placed in places outside of the church. Some of them were lost, their whereabouts unknown, useless." Gamaliel snorted coldly. The Pope could only hurriedly apologize. "Since angels need holy relics, I will have people send the holy relics outside back. It's just that there are still a few that are a little difficult at the moment." The Pope said, "Before angels descended, One of the holy relics was taken away by the Black Order. But now we have determined where it appeared. Unfortunately, this holy relic has been reversed by the Black Order with a secret technique. It seems to be able to produce a dark force field that can burn the holy power within the force field. I'm afraid this is a method that the Black Order used to deal with the Holy Church. This group of Satan's believers, no matter where they are always in trouble. The Pope suddenly said at this moment, "Lord Gamaliel, there is one more thing." "What is it?" The Pope lowered his head and said, "Where the reversed holy relic appeared, there should be another holy relic. It may be in the hands of a priest named Stella." Stella? Yes, this person was once the warden of the Church's godly might prison. The Pope said slowly, "Back then, there was a holy knight in the Paladin order named Amonst who rebelled against the Church because his descendant fell in love with a vampire. Stella was the person responsible for arresting him at that time, but he let Amonst leave in the end. After this incident, Stella resigned from his position as the warden of the godly might prison and quietly took away a holy relic." Fool! Angels, you may not know this, but although Stella is arrogant, his strength is abnormally strong. The Pope said rather helplessly, "Stella later hid in Britain, where the knight's mechanism originated. The Holy Church really can't do anything too big." "Britain? Knight's mechanism?" Gamaliel frowned. "It really is a chaotic place where many myths are entangled with each other. Even the Celts, who are in such a poor state, can actually leave behind a spark here. But it is merely the inheritance of a ruined god system, nothing to worry about." "Indeed." The Pope thought for a while and said, "I have already communicated with the Queen of Britain and obtained the privilege of free movement. The Holy Church's activities from now on will not be obstructed by the knight's mechanism. You can have more freedom. We don't have time to play war games with the descendants of these small god systems here." Gamaliel shook his head. "Too weak, this kind of heresy should be eradicated." As he spoke, Gamaliel's gaze swept over the two descended angels on the left. "Go and retrieve the reverse relic, and then bring back the priest who stole the relic as well." When they had just descended, Hamlet had already sensed the suppression of the world will of this small world on transcendence. It was clear where the limits of this suppression were. These two descending angels, by relying on the holy relics they had used to descend, could already use the limit of what was permitted, enough to suppress all voices of opposition. The moment Gamaliel gave the order, the two angels flew out of the holy city, turning into two streaks of light and disappearing into the horizon like meteors. Seeing this, the Pope's heart trembled. These descended angels, especially this Lord Gamaliel, seemed to be especially tough. They gave the Pope the feeling that compared to angels, they were more like soldiers. "There is one more thing," Gamaliel suddenly said. The Pope hurriedly looked like he was listening. Gamaliel said coldly, "Gather all the believers who are qualified to become petitioners from all over the world to the Holy City. Once we are done here, we will take these petitioners away." All over the world? So urgent? What exactly happened in the kingdom of heaven? Inside the cave. Outside was the surging seawater that slapped against the reef, and Grant was doing some simple treatment for her injuries here. Her shoulder was directly pierced by the stone thrown by Father Stella, as if it had been pierced by an armor-piercing bullet. The injury was very serious. The reverse cross of fear was not like the Godslayer armor, which was equipped with high-level healing spells. She could only use the violent method to stop the bleeding. A small box was being projected, and on it was Katerina's appearance. She already knew that this operation had failed, and she already knew the consequences. "Is Stella really that powerful? Can't you see the wound on my body?" Silence. Not only did the angels descend, even the warden of the godly might prison has this kind of power. Katerina's face was gloomy. "Is the Black Order really going to withdraw from this era? I hope that you can satisfy pride at all costs, and really complete that thing." Grant gritted her teeth. At this moment, she was using a stapler-like suturing tool to seal the wound on her shoulder. "Come back first," Katerina hurriedly said. "Don't worry about Lamias for now. The Black Order can't lose you." "I'll think of a way." Sister Grant nodded, but her expression suddenly changed slightly. What happened? Katerina was keenly aware of something. "A cat." Sister Grant suddenly frowned and said, "There's a black cat here." "Cat? What cat?" But Katerina, who was far away on the other side of the ocean, had already lost communication with Sister Grant at this time. It was all dark. No matter how anxious Katerina was, the communication could not be restored. The black cat stood at the entrance of the cave, and its green eyes made people shudder. Sister Grant clenched the hilt of the greatsword and endured the pain to pull open the shoulder armor and directly cover it. "Who is it?" A figure slowly walked out from behind the black cat. It was a man wearing a tuxedo and a top hat. The hat was very low, and she could not see the man's appearance clearly. The other party didn't answer the Grant Friar's question. It was just a shadow that silently spread to her side in an instant. She could not avoid it in time, and the shadow swallowed her in an instant. In the end, she only heard the other party's low voice. "Your time is up." The cave was completely silent. Outside, the man in the black suit and the black cat were walking slowly on the beach. He suddenly stopped, looked at the sea, and said to himself, "The Black Order, the Holy Church, there has never been one before. It seems that this time is really different. Then, maybe I can." The sea water rushed to the beach, and the man and the black cat disappeared at some unknown time. Not long after the man in the black suit and the black cat disappeared, two meteor-like radiances slowly landed on the coastline. The angels. "This place gives me a very uncomfortable feeling." One of the angels frowned. The other angel thought for a while and said, "Let's search. We only need to take the holy relic and stella away." Lord Hamalek said that he wants to increase the influence of the Holy Church. What do you think he plans to do? The angel said with interest. This time, recovering the holy relic and capturing a priest, in their opinion, was a relatively easy task. Naturally, they could be more casual, so they began to talk. His companion thought for a while and said, "To increase the influence of the Church and let the divine authority descend, the best way is naturally to trigger a war between transcendents, and then suppress all the transcendents in the world, showing the greatness of heaven to the world. Anyway, Subworld 003 does not seem to prohibit the existence of transcendent. If Lord Hamalek wants to end this quickly, he will consider this plan. It is said that the more advanced a subworld is, the more dangerous it is, but now it seems." The angel smiled and said, "This place is not as dangerous as we imagined. Although the world's will is very suppressed, it has no evil intentions. Compared to the subworlds we have explored, it can even be said to be gentle. Be careful." The other angel shook his head and said, "The calmer it looks on the outside, the more likely it is to hide turbulence. This place is already considered the first station to explore the origin, and there may already be many mighty people who have fallen in between the cracks here. Although we can use the combat power of the world's limit, it does not mean that we are invincible. You are right, I have also never encountered such a gentle world's will. This place is indeed strange. Let's go." The angel patted his companion's shoulder. "Don't think so much. Isn't it good to be gentle? Could it be that you will only be happy if we encounter a hell difficulty here? Anyway, be careful." Chapter 1607. After leaving the beach, the first thing Lamias did was to call the dean of the religious order, who was also a spy in the university. Behind her, in a car, a man and a woman were already naked and unconscious in the back seat. While looking at the dean's phone number on the ledger, Lamias pressed the numbers on the screen. "Who is it?" "It's me." "Why is it an unknown number?" The dean was surprised. Lamias found a random excuse to deal with it. The main reason she called the dean was to determine if he was worth the order from the religious order to capture her. After a short conversation, Lamias was almost certain that the dean didn't know about this. It seemed that Katerina's plan to sacrifice her was also secretly carried out. As expected, even if they compromised, they still needed to calm the emotions of the old faction members. Lamias sneered in her heart. She was already disappointed in the Black Order, and now she hoped that there would be a conflict between the old faction and the new faction within the religious order, leading to internal strife. But with the pressure from the angels of the Holy Church, this idea would probably not come to fruition for a long time. Back to the conversation with the dean. I need to use a weapon. When? As soon as possible. Wait for me at 78, 3rd Street in half an hour. Lamias could even hear the sound of the dean getting dressed on the other end of the phone. After Lamias hung up the phone, she threw it back into the car. Then, she carried a black suitcase, got on her motorcycle, and drove to the designated location. The suitcase contained the reverse cross of fear. This armor's folding limit was about the same as a regular office suitcase, but it was not comparable to the religious order's greatest masterpiece, the God-slaying armor. Naturally, it was much less portable, and it also needed to be recharged. Although she managed to peel off the reverse cross of fear from the 6 combat nuns, she had already broken off relations with Katerina, and obviously would not be able to get any replenishment from the religious order in the future. There was a temporary weapons and equipment warehouse in the town, which had always been taken care of by the discipline director. Lamias planned to loot the warehouse tonight to store some supplies for the future. Father Stella was not necessarily reliable. In order to survive in this upcoming chaotic world, he must have some means to protect himself. Half an hour passed quickly. The operation started in the evening, and now it was exactly midnight. In front of the door of Building 78 on the 3rd Street, a figure in a trench coat was already waiting. After a beautiful fall, Lamias stopped in front of the discipline director. "Are there any special operations tonight?" the dean asked as he opened the door. However, Lamias said, "You've been lurking outside for more than 10 years. Have you ever thought about leaving your current position and transferring back to the headquarters?" He didn't know why Lamias suddenly asked such a question. He frowned and said, "When it's time to transfer me back, the headquarters will naturally transfer me back. With your personality, it's not suitable to be in the headquarters." Lamias shook her head. The discipline director opened his mouth and was about to say something, but he only felt something hit the back of his neck. Then, his vision turned black and he fell to the ground. Lamias took a pen and paper, casually wrote a group of bank account numbers and secrets on it, and finally a line of words. After that, she stuffed it into the discipline director's pocket. Then, she took the key, opened the secret door, and went directly into the underground of the house. At this time, the entire arsenal was placed in front of Lamias. The outermost was obviously the conventional firearms. The stock was enough to support a large-scale terrorist attack. However, in the face of the inhuman power, such conventional weapons were obviously useless. Found it, the Pi Type 2 battery. Lamias was a little surprised. The harvest is not bad. In addition to the backup battery, there were also some parts that could be used to repair the armor and a set of equipment for modification. Looking at the 6 sets of inverse cross of fear, the parts in the warehouse, and the reverse holy relics on her body, a crazy idea suddenly appeared in Lamias's mind. On the street, 2 descending angels were walking in the direction of the church. The carrier they used this time was a man and a woman specially prepared by the Holy Church. Their original physical quality was already outstanding among humans, and their appearance was also very perfect. The aura of the angels was naturally different from that of ordinary people. Coupled with the high-quality shell, it was easy to attract the attention of passers-by, those who had just returned from the bar. However, the aura of the 2 angels was too obvious, so they didn't encounter any human who came forward to harass them. No matter what era it is, there will always be such degenerate people. The male descending angel shook his head at this time. This era needs the purification of the holy light. The female descending angel didn't pay attention to her companion. At this time, she just looked at the two figures coming toward her. They were two men who seemed to have a lot on their minds. They didn't seem to notice that a pair of eyes was watching them. They were just talking in a low voice. Sir Dagonet left in such a hurry. What happened? How would I know? Just now, the headquarters only gave us a temporary evacuation order. The Knight organization, in its own territory, has to give in to the Holy Church. This is really... The two men were Knight Muffin and Knight Wickedall, who were stationed in the town. Since the clown Dagonet left in a hurry, the two of them were confused and didn't know what to do next. Until just now, they received a direct order from Mr. Gareth from the headquarters of the Knight organization in Misty City. Yes, the Knight organization is really unstable now. Muffin shook her head with a bitter smile. It wasn't like this before. I heard that 100 years ago, when Mr. Farrell was still here, the paladins of the Holy Church had to give in wherever the Knights of the Round Table went. How majestic that was! At this time, a voice came. Really? Is this Mr. Farrell really that powerful? I wonder if the two of you can tell me more about this Mr. Farrell? Muffin and Wickedall were stunned. They didn't feel anyone approaching. When they turned around, they saw a man and a woman standing behind them. They were handsome and had an unusual temperament. Who are you? The two knights instantly became alert. The male descending angel glanced at the female descending angel and revealed a sunny smile. Us? Didn't the two of you just mention where we came from? You are from the Holy Church. Muffin quickly glanced at Wickedall and frowned. What do you want to do? The male angel chuckled and said calmly, We just want to know how powerful this Mr. Farrell you are talking about is. As he said this, he reached out his hand and opened his 5 fingers. Muffin and Wickedall only felt a sense of suffocation. Their muscles tightened, but before they could resist, they were sucked to the other party by an invisible force. Memory reading. The male angel reached out and grabbed Muffin's forehead. The female angel saw this and shook her head helplessly, but she could only grab Wickedall's head. She couldn't wait for the male angel to read it and then spend time explaining it to her. If they read it together, the efficiency would be higher. The two opponents were just mortals with some strength. Although they were only 2 winged angels, they had always been fighting under the banner of Archangel Michael. Their strength was far beyond those of the same level, and they were not inferior to ordinary 4-winged angels. It was too easy for them to read the memories of 2 ordinary people. A few minutes later, Muffin and Wickedall fell to the ground like mud and fainted. The male angel frowned. What's going on? This Muffin guy is telling the truth. Is there really such a guy called Farrell? The female angel muttered. This Wickedall has some information about the 100 Years' War in his memory, but it's very little. It's probably because his position isn't high, so he doesn't have much contact. It's the same on my side. The male angel thought for a while and said, The war 100 years ago caused the entire transcendent world to decline. Why didn't the Pope mention this? This Pope seems to be hiding something from us. The female angel finally frowned. About this Farrell, if the legend they know is true, then Farrell might have the ability to threaten us angels. A subworld is so big. It's not strange for 1 or 2 powerhouses to reach the limit to appear occasionally. The male angel shook his head, but such a powerful individual actually didn't appear in the Holy Church. How useless. The church of this subworld is suppressed by a power inheritor who destroyed the Celtic divine system. This matter needs to be reported to Lord Hamaliel, the female angel said after thinking for a while. There's no hurry. The male angel said, Since we're here, let's take the holy relic and the traitor priest away first. We'll go back and report to Lord Hamaliel. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of time to come and go. The female angel thought the same and nodded. Then, A pair of light wings spread out from her back, and she soared into the sky. The same was true for the male angel. After all, they were the exploration army of Kingdom of Heaven, exploring the infinite subworld. They had long developed a swift and decisive style. Sometimes they could even be said to be unscrupulous, as for displaying extraordinary power and causing a shock to the world. Not to mention that Lord Gamaliel probably had the intention of letting the Holy Church take control of the world by triggering an extraordinary war. Just the fact that they had followed Archangel Michael to conquer the world showed how many subworlds they had fought against the will of the world. The exploration army of Kingdom of Heaven didn't blindly fight against the will of the world of the various subworlds. Through continuous exploration, Kingdom of Heaven had long developed a set of methods to deal with the will of the world. Different subworlds had different mainstream. As long as they followed the mainstream of the will of the world and stole the role of the protagonist appointed by the will of the world, they could still achieve the goal of exploring a new subworld. Mama, look! There's an angel! Go to sleep, my good baby. Mama will tell you a scary bedtime story. There's really an angel? Although it was late at night, more than one or two people saw angels. On the desk, a piece of white paper with a hand-drawn circle was laid flat. On the white paper, along with the activation of structural alchemy, a ball of liquid emitting a metallic luster was constantly changing. This was the shape of a metal handicraft after completely decomposing it with the ability of a sphere. Boss Luo was using this metal liquid to pinch some small toys with interest. At this moment, within this room, the rules of alchemy were allowed to be used. Outside the room, naturally, everything was normal. This was just a small game used to pass time. Boss Luo naturally wouldn't waste time. However, he wrote the rules of a circle into Araya's system. An ability that ordinary people can also master. A glimmer of light flashed in Boss Luo's eyes. Analyze, understand, and create. As long as the elemental composition of the human body is clear, in theory, the elements of an animal's body could be completely decomposed and finally combined to create a living human body. Boss Luo suddenly fell into deep thought. Suddenly, a pair of soft hands were placed on his shoulders, kneading just right. Boss Luo opened his eyes, and a smile appeared on his face. Is it done, the third server? There's no trouble, it's very smooth. Miss Maid's hands moved up a little, and the kneading position moved from the shoulders to the back of Boss Luo's ears. Next, find a black soul to supervise, then the third server can be officially activated. At this moment, Luoqiu shook his head. Master? Luoqiu said softly, I don't know when it started, but this business seems to be getting bigger and bigger. After all, when Boss Luo just took over the shop, he was only doing some small businesses under the guidance of Miss Maid. But Miss Maid didn't think so. Big? This is just the beginning, my master. She knew in her heart that the previous shop owner did business from one world to another, relying on the critical door and the continuous production of black souls. But the Master God plan was a business that customers would come to, so the meaning of the existence of black soul envoys was reduced to the minimum. What's this? Miss Maid pointed at the changing liquid metal ball on the table. Boss Luo pulled out his thoughts from the business in his hands, and answered with a smile, a kind of alchemy of other worlds. If you have enough knowledge, you can even refine a human body. Human body. Miss Maid's eyes lit up. Isn't this? Boss Luo nodded and said, do you remember that world civilization was destroyed because of the creation of artificial soul? Artificial soul, and refine a human body. I don't know what will happen when they are combined. The ultimate forbidden zone of life. Creating humans. The altar could easily create humans as long as there were enough sacrifices. Anything was not a problem for the altar. Its existence itself was like an impossible thing. Humans, on the other hand, were intelligent creatures. Slowly, step by step, they turned the impossible into possible. At this moment, Miss Maid, who was still calculating and deducing about artificial soul and refine a human body, heard Boss Luo's words. He said, "Do you think that when all the intelligent creatures make all the impossible things possible, at the end of time and space, they have already become what we are now?" Maybe Miss Maid was shocked. This was a point of view that she had never thought of before. Chapter 1608. This was almost a crazy idea. If it could be realized, then there would be a group of intelligent life at the end of time and space. Their creativity had reached the same level as the altar. Even Luo Qiu himself was surprised by his own thoughts. A ripple was raised in his calm heart at this moment. However, it soon disappeared without a trace. Because Boss Luo found one thing: time didn't stop when he was talking to Miss Maid. Almost every time when he was discussing something with Yu Yi, time would stop. Boss Luo seemed to feel the ridicule from the altar. In his consciousness, he seemed to see such a scene. An arrogant girl was pointing at him with her hands on her waist. "Stupid human, I feel sad for your ignorance. It's impossible for such a possibility to exist in thousands of time and space." Blah blah. Boss Luo had erased the scene because of its magical nature. Luoqiu came back from his absent-mindedness and found that Miss Maid was still staring at him. The adorable dazed girl that appeared by chance was actually so moving. "It's just a joke." Boss Luo smiled. "Such an intelligent life probably doesn't exist, unless we can buy one from the shop." "Buy an intelligent life with such a possibility?" Miss Maid suddenly added. Boss Luo couldn't help being stunned. Such a possibility didn't mean it could be realized. Maybe such a possibility had already appeared, but it had failed due to other reasons before reaching the end. Miss Maid obviously saw it more clearly than Boss Luo. Or, since a long time ago, when she sold herself to the shop, she had a period of time to think about this problem. "Let's not talk about this." Boss Luo waved his hand. "We're not robbers who covet the shop's property." Indeed, there was no need to think about this. As the manager of the shop, Boss Luo had the right to do anything. Although he offered enough sacrifices through the altar, the label of "it will be realized" had been put on him long ago. The servant girl nodded and immediately said, "Angels have come, and 2 of them have come here." "I know." Luoqiu nodded. "There will probably be some entertainment tonight." Glancing at the peanuts, dried nuts and cheese beside the desk, Miss Maid blinked and asked, "Master, have you been sleeping late recently? Perhaps it is human nature to stay up late?" Boss Luo smiled casually. His schedule had indeed been a bit messy these past few nights. He counted. It seemed that he had spent a night in a bar with Teacher Poulin, and then spent a few nights adventuring with Claudia in the Oasis Temple in the desert. When he returned, he had spent the entire night playing games. Life without Miss Maid's management was indeed a bit dissolute. However, a good show was about to begin. In front of Luoqiu, light screens rose out of thin air. Isn't this the nun that we met in Ramalia?" Miss Maid suddenly said. "What a coincidence." So, with so many screens and so much content, Miss Maid was the first to discover something. Boss Luo silently stretched out his paw to pick up a dried nut and chewed it. "Her name is Lamia's. Last night I just got some content of composition alchemy from her." At this time, Lamia's was in the underground arsenal, wearing a small vest and working hard with a welding machine. She didn't know that there were 2 pairs of eyes watching her. After a while, Lamia's took out the holy relic of reversal and placed it on the workbench. At this time, there were many different parts on the workbench. This seems to be the design of the fear element, armor. Miss Maid blinked at this time. It seems that in the game 100 years ago, it was picked up by the Allied forces and then fell into the hands of the Black Order? Hey, what does she want to do? It seems that she wants to fuse these things together with composition alchemy. Boss Luo smiled and said, "This nun is very strong and has an unyielding character." Under the power of the sphere, the parts on the workbench began to gradually undergo some wonderful changes. It was unknown whether it was a success or a failure, but at this time, Lamia's face was pale. Obviously, she couldn't handle the upcoming experiment. Miss Maid shook her head, and her interest seemed to be reduced. Then she thought for a while and said, "Master, the nature of sphere is very convenient. You wants to buy the right to use it, is it okay?" "Of course. But—" Boss Luo smiled slightly, holding Miss Maid's hand and said, "It's hard for you to build the third server. Just take it as a reward." Miss Maid smiled slightly, waved her hand, and a complicated sphere appeared on the table. The floating green flame suddenly trembled. The essence of the green flame seemed to be emitting a feeling of fear at this time. On the shabby single sofa, Mr. Poulin, who was taking a nap, slowly opened his eyes and looked out of the window thoughtfully. Outside the night sky, 2 lights flashed quickly. Mr. Poulin stood up in surprise and walked to the window sill. "This is an angel?" The direction was, without a doubt, in the direction of the church. Teacher Poulin shook his head and muttered to himself, "This priest, we've had a lot of guests these days. He actually fought with Father Stella once when he first came to this place. At that time, he wasn't as adept at using his own power of death as he was now. He was practically in a state of being beaten." This was also the first time Teacher Poulin found out that a simple human could actually be so powerful. Of course, because of the existence of the death power, even if Father Stella could beat him, he couldn't do anything to him in the end. Then the priest was tired and left with regret. After that, they didn't fight and tacitly didn't know each other's past. He was a theology tutor in the university, and he was a priest in the church. They chatted occasionally and their days were very peaceful. While thinking secretly, Mr. Poulin's face suddenly changed slightly. A painful color began to appear on his face. He suddenly knelt on the ground, and his hands wearing white gloves were completely pressed against the floor. The green flame that was transformed by the ghost behind him was now circling around him in horror. "You should leave quickly. I can't control it." Mr. Poulin squeezed out a voice from his throat, "Hurry." The ghost flame hesitated for a moment and finally flew out of the window. Mr. Poulin's face was now more painful. The blood vessels all over his body appeared, especially on his face. It was frightening. What was flowing through those veins was actually black blood. Balls of death aura, like burning flames, spread out from the surface of his body. "What's going on? Why is it so intense this time?" Finally, some kind of pain had exceeded his limit, and Mr. Poulin suddenly fell to the ground motionless. Only the death power that broke out of his body seemed to have become much stronger in an instant. But at this time, at the frame of the window, a black cat appeared out of nowhere. The black cat jumped down and silently came in front of Mr. Poulin. The black cat opened its mouth and directly sucked in all the death power outside Mr. Poulin's body. Gradually, Mr. Poulin's painful expression began to ease. After an unknown amount of time, the black cat jumped out of the window again, and Mr. Poulin slept peacefully on the floor like a normal person. Church, courtyard, utility room. It was night time. Mayor Lotta quietly poked his head out and observed the surroundings. At this time, there was no sound at all in the church. A few of the backup holy knights were woken up by Vasco, who went to remove the effects of the veil of darkness that appeared in the evening. They busied themselves all the way until 11 o'clock before they returned and fell asleep. Very good. No one. Mayor Lotta saw this and quickly retracted his head. He quickly took out an old backpack. This was what he found in the utility room, and then he began to organize the things he had now. A map, stolen from Father Stella's study. Candle lighter I stole it when I was doing chores in the kitchen. 2 underwear, stolen from Father Stella's laundry room. 3 bottles of mineral water, stolen from the church's activity room. 3 strawberry-flavored condoms, used to deal with emergencies such as water. 3 packs of biscuits, 5 ham sausages, 1½ chocolates, half a corn from yesterday, half a bag of bread eaten in the morning, and a few cans of canned fruit. saved little by little over the past few days. Perfect. Mayor Lotta looked at the bulging backpack with satisfaction. He believed that with this batch of supplies, it was enough to support him to leave this town and go to the nearby city. It was too dangerous here, and he could not go back to the inhuman domain. So he only wanted to leave this place temporarily. The power disappeared, and the only communication device that could be used to contact the Soth god in the inhuman domain was also crushed by Wasco's foot, which made Mayor Lotta feel a sense of homelessness. He did not want to live under someone else's roof. Tonight was a great opportunity. If he did not leave now, when would he leave? Fully prepared, Mayor Lotta quietly opened the door of the utility room, and after a few rolls in the courtyard, he successfully reached the door of the corridor in the back hall. The pillars of the corridor were natural shelter, and Mayor Lotta quickly used them as cover to successfully reach the church's church hall. He opened the door of the church slightly, and after observing the situation inside, Mayor Lotta rolled in again. After a few more rolls on the ground, Maidan Lotta cautiously raised his head and looked around. Then, he extended his hand. This was the last important item that he had to take before leaving, the donation box for the people to donate to him. In order to successfully take the donations in the donation box, Mayor Lotta had prepared early on. While he was drying clothes during the day, he hid a drying rack and bent it into a hook. This will be my wages for the next few days. Looking at the banknote being hooked bit by bit, the once glorious cadre of the Soth god, the descendant of the great god of war Ares, could not help but reveal a trace of ecstasy. Who knew what the past 2 weeks of life had done to him? But at this moment, the church hall suddenly shone brightly. Mayor Lotta was shocked, and the banknote that was about to be hooked fell back into the box. The corner of Mayor Lotta's mouth twitched, and at the moment when he was angry, he was greeted by 2 dazzling rays of light. 2 wings of light. What appeared in front of Mayor Lotta were 2 angels of descent. Mayor Lotta instantly opened his eyes wide, and looked at the 2 angels of descent in front of him in disbelief, and felt that there was nothing left to live for. He only intended to take a little bit of donations from the donation box, really just a little bit. Was there a need for angels of descent to bully him like this? You are Father Stella? This was a scene that made the air freeze. The moment the 2 angels of descent appeared, they saw a bald man who was hooking the donation box of the church's money. What kind of people were they? They were the guardians of the Lord's faith. Seeing this scene, they were instantly furious. You are in charge of a church in vain, and you actually commit theft. No wonder you betrayed the church, so you are a degenerate. You really disappoint us. The male angel of descent shook his head and said disappointedly, If I didn't have to bring you back, I would have given you a purifying holy fire right now. I'm not. Mayor Lotta braced himself, and his voice trembled. The male angel of descent's anger rose, and the pressure made Mayor Lotta feel very uncomfortable. He was horrified. I'm not Father Stella. Hearing this, the male angel of descent became even angrier. Thieves are even more abominable. Accept the punishment of the holy light. After saying this, the male angel waved his hand, and a ray of holy light shot toward Mayor Lotta. No doubt, this holy light contained a terrifying power. Like thousands of extras who encountered such a situation of certain death, Mayor Lotta cried out in grief in his heart, My life is over. But at this moment, something seemed to step on his head, and then jumped up. It was a fat figure, a fat Jean Echelon. Brother Tom? At this moment, Brother Tom used Mayor Lotta's head to rush up. Facing the incoming holy light, he directly opened his mouth and swallowed the holy light into his stomach. After swallowing the holy light, Brother Tom landed on the ground and burped. Then, he raised his hind legs and scratched his ears. If God closes this door, he will surely open another one. So, don't be sad and don't despair when you encounter setbacks and hardships in life, because I'm here. Behind him, Father Stella's voice slowly came. Mayor Lotta subconsciously turned around and looked at Father Stella emotionally. At this moment, Father Stella held a thick scripture book and slapped it on Mayor Lotta's head, making him see stars. Bastard! I kindly took you in, provided you with food and shelter. I didn't expect, you actually dared to steal my money. Is my money so easy to steal? I'll beat you to death, you ungrateful bastard. Who asked you to steal my money? Who asked you to steal? Who asked you to steal? The priest was trembling at this moment. He was angry. #######PS. 880 seconds.